was pro-Russian, and then ended up, ordering police to open fire at crowds. 100 people died, and then came the insurgency in Ukraine. Most of Ukraine, actually, the vast majority of Ukraine supports NATO membership, is pro-American, and supports EU membership. This is a country which is very closely aligned already on the population level and on the military level with the US. So for you to suggest that, there won't be Ukrainian Taliban.
The military is so good. Why do they need our help then if they're on the same level?
Russia goes in.
Adam, if they're on the same
Because
level,
Russia's military, on the same
it
level.
just shows you how ingenuine you are. You're saying they have the same level of military as us, and they need us. They need our help. You just said we had the same size military. You just insinuated we're the same size. That's what you insinuated. I'm just saying. Dude, are you going to insinuate bullcrap, or are you going to insinuate what you're trying to make?
Okay. Let's calm down for a second.
Can I clarify?
I think I can clarify.
I want to try that again. Why don't you try that again?
He was saying, as far as I could tell, that we're on the same level diplomatically, like when it comes to like alliance structure.
Yes.
That's what it felt like.
Okay. I thought he meant same size military. Like I thought he meant like we're the same. Why would they need our help? Well, I thought you were insinuating we're the same military as them. I mean, you could say that they're our allies, but how is Russia? How is Russia not our ally? We share the International Space Station with them. We share
8,000 nukes in America, dude.
No, but I'm saying
they're aiming 8,000 nukes at your family, dude.
I'm saying we have treaties with Russia, and who's the only person that's ever dropped a nuke? The United States. They're the only person that's ever dropped it.
Yeah,
So.
fascist
on another nation, not ever. I hope he's
empire that attacked America. Way to victim blame America, dude. I'm sure you probably call yourself a patriot. You're right now shilling for a country that's aiming nukes at your city and your family, dude. This is embarrassing. Dude, just because you're a goober doesn't make you an alpha.
Okay,
listen. I know Putin's not a big enough idiot to send nuclear weapons and blow up America, because I know Putin has half a brain. That's why I know that, and you probably know that too. That they're not going to start a nuclear holocaust.
Shut the flip up.
You know that over Ukraine. You know that, so you're trying to act all scared. Oh, I'm so scared of Russia. Why don't you wake up? Why don't you live your life? Stop living in fear of these rockets that Putin's pointing at you. Oh, I'm so scared. Putin's going to get me. I mean.
Okay. So we're gonna move on. We gotta move on to Destiny, because Destiny's been waiting a decent bit to talk. Raised his hand earlier.
I'm not sure what. Am I responding to the 9/11 hijacker thing or the?
It was a while ago. I forget. I think it was in response to what.
Yeah, I feel like this idea of waiting until it's too late is kind of like eerily similar to the Hitler thing, although I don't like to draw comparisons to World War II because obviously the whole landscape is quite a bit different than it was back then. But I don't think that we could wait for Russia to take over Ukraine and then maybe start encroaching into Poland, and then at that point be like, oh shit, maybe now we need to do something, because then we're going to be back at ground zero for this conversation, and instead we're going to be having a panel in 4 years saying like, well, should the United States support Poland on the ground? And it's like, well, if we put troops there, like that's pretty aggressive, and I don't know, like just because they took over Poland, like are they really gonna go even further? Like it's only like Georgia, Crimea, Ukraine. Like is it in some of Poland? Like I feel like you kind of have to draw a line in the sand pretty early so that the rest of the world knows where you stand, especially your allies. Like, is the United States going to be a reliable partner here to protect you here? Because if not, it seems like similar to a domino effect, the United States is going to not stand by its kind of worldwide obligation to prevent the encroachment of Russia into other countries. Then why not just roll over immediately and join Russia sooner rather than wait for the inevitable conflict?
Can I ask Stephen a question?
Sure, Taft, you were the first to raise your hand,
Yeah, it's just going to be a short one. In your estimation, what do you think was the reason or objective in the United States' decision to enter the European theater in World War II?
What was the objective?
What was our goal there?
Well, Hitler declared war on America.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought there was a joint declaration of war from Japan and then Germany, so I thought we kind of had to get involved at that point, or were we? I don't know. Like, I'm sure for objectives, I'm sure there were multiple objectives, but I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are probably two objectives, right? Okay. Either one, to stop the Holocaust.
That's absolutely
nobody knew about the Holocaust.
The Holocaust had nothing to do with it.
I'm just saying that there's like multiple objectives that people put forth, right?
That's nobody knew about the
Holocaust was not one of them. But what's the second one you were going to say?
Okay. Yeah, obviously, the average American troop and the people entering the European theater at the time were not, I would say, their goal was not to stop the Holocaust. But some people make this argument. The other one is to defeat Germany.
Okay, those people are dumb. Because the Holocaust was like one of those revelations that we made like while we were invading. And like I think the first time that we figured out that they were like holocausting was because we had scout planes fly over and see like these camps, and we're like, what the fuck is that? And we discovered that like, oh fuck, like, and then through spy missions or whatever, we discovered that like, oh, they're just executing Jews, and we figured that out like during the war, like after the invasion of France, I think.
Germany, right, and to contain the German expansion. And what we got by entering World War II in the European theater was...
Hold on, I gotta go back a bit. Let me see what she said before that.
It was not one of them. But what's the second one you were gonna say?
Okay. Yeah, obviously, you know, the average American troop and the people entering the European theater at the time were not, I would say, their goal was not to stop the Holocaust. But some people make this argument. The other one is to defeat Germany, right? And to contain the German expansion. And what we got by entering World War II in the European theater was we worked with Russia to contain Germany. But another strategy, in hindsight, would have been to let Russia and Germany go to war with each other, tire each other out, and then come in at the end and defeat Germany, deliver the final blow, liberate Europe, and then have a weaker Russian, Soviet...
I'm not sure where this is going to go. I don't know if this is just an idea. I don't know if she actually agrees with this, because this is unimaginably stupid. Because, okay, that was aggressive. Not unimaginably stupid. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was an unimaginable surprise to everyone. Because, maybe this is where she's going with this. Because the original idea was that, like, okay, Germany can't do anything because to the east they have Russia and to the west they have France. They're fucked, okay? They grabbed, the idea is they can have Austria, they can have Czechoslovakia, you know, and they should be done, right? They you know, because they can't go east and they can't go west. Well, there's Poland there. Okay, so they, you know, we have a little bit of ground east that we can't really defend, but we're obligated to defend. So, that one's an interesting one. But, you know, Russia's there. Russia will come in and defend them. That was the idea moving into World War II. The moment the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is signed is the day the war starts. Not really, but, you know, that's when it's like, oh, fuck. Poland has no eastern defense anymore. Poland is isolated and is completely free to invade. And what happens? Danzig happens, and they invade Poland. And in the shortest amount of time possible, they take over Poland. And then there's I think it's the phony war happens here, where France just doesn't invade Germany because they think that Germany will just stop. Like, okay, you took Poland, you're done, right? You're done, and there's like a phony war. But, you know, the rest of the war happens.
Empire
so we'll see.
To deal with in the Cold War, post-war.
Wait, who's to say that Germany wouldn't have completely dominated? Irrelevant.
Yeah. Also, seeing how the Russians started off the war when they finally joined it, they got fucking curb stomped for the early part until winter came, and Stalingrad happened. So who's to say that a war even earlier might not have just gotten the Russians totally killed? Because at the time, they're dealing with the Purge. They're dealing with... So the Great Purge is happening. So by the time the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is signed, I don't even think Russia's army is organized. I think Stalin is still murdering everyone he knows.
Even for that, who's to say that Germany wouldn't have just continued to take over the entirety of Europe?
They wouldn't have, though.
Why?
Right? Because they didn't have the overwhelming support.
Well, they didn't... Yeah, but if you curb stomp Russia, you might. I don't know if you... God, okay. History is so fucking annoying. Because this gets to the politics, too, about, like, historical politics. Who knows the popularity of Germany if they curb stomp Russia and they take over France. Because I think popularity of Germans in France wasn't that bad because the Germans didn't give a fuck about French people. They basically just let them live mostly normal lives, to my knowledge. Maybe an argument can be made here because 100% the Germans would be just slaughtering Russians. Because they were ideologically opposed to them. Like they were not friends at all. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Force necessary to
Let me see.
To take over the entirety of Europe.
They wouldn't have though.
Why?
Right? Because they didn't have the overwhelming force necessary to do that.
Wait,
They
hold
may
on,
have
wait.
agreed
History.
a
I'm really bad at.
peace
Hold on,
deal.
wait. Okay, I'm really bad at history. I'm gonna.
Wait, before he says it. No, I don't even know what he's gonna say actually. My thought on it is that, like I said before, they didn't give a fuck about French people. They would have been murdering Russians for sure, but at the time, if the war starts earlier, then Russians are probably just gonna get shit canned. So, they definitely have the force required to like sustain a European empire, but because they have Franco, because if they curb stomp Russia hard enough, maybe they can help Franco, and then they have Spain on their side as well.
First to admit that, okay? But Germany blitzkrieged the entire fucking continent. They absolutely had the overwhelming force to take over, to finish with the United Kingdom.
True.
I don't understand how they couldn't.
But it was Russia that overwhelmingly put a stop to them in
No,
Europe.
hold on.
No,
No, wait,
that's
hold on,
US
wait.
Whoa. Okay, this is stupid. These fucking stupid fucks. Okay. That's way the fuck later. Okay. We have the first wave of the war. Germany comes in, curb stomps the fuck out of France. That is step one of the... Well, curb stomps the fuck out of Poland. Then curb stomps the fuck out of France. Then there's a bunch of nothing going on for a while. Invasion of Normandy. Some shit happens in fucking Asia no one cares about. Predominantly the invasion of Normandy, okay? But a lot of nothing happens. Well, mainly the war is taking place in Africa. Northern Africa is where most of the war is happening. So there's a bunch of nothing going on in Europe for a long time until Germany breaks the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and invades Russia. And they fucking curb stomp Russia hard. Like, it's not even fucking close. They absolutely pile drive Russia all the way back to Moscow. I think they take Leningrad. And they move all the way into Stalingrad, all the way here, in aim to take the Caucasus. Germany was a fucking machine tearing through all of Europe. They controlled a majority of the European theater. Up until a very cold winter came and turned the tides of battle for Russia, who was just so massive that they just hid some factories in the fucking mountains and then, were pumping out tanks daily. And Normandy happened. It was a joint effort. Yeah, Russians definitely killed way more Germans than anyone else. But to say that, we'll see where this goes.
Wait, okay, hold on. Russia did not put a stop to Germany in Europe. Russia put a stop to Germany in Russia because Germany pushed really, really, really far east. But my understanding is they had no trouble sweeping completely west across the entire continent of Europe until U.S. troops were on the ground.
But Russia's intention was to go straight to Berlin, which they did do. And in the...
Okay, sure, but that is ignoring the fact that Germany pile-drived France... And the only time we finally stepped back on to European soil was D-Day. Okay? So the start of the war is France getting pile-drived, and the end of the war is D-Day. That's a lot of time of Germany just controlling all of Europe.
Alternate history where America waits, right, to enter, and lets the European powers fight for a longer
time. Oh, so she's saying oh, I'm not on this panel. She's arguing for a alternate history where D-Day doesn't happen after the Battle of Stalingrad, basically. I think D-Day happens before that. I'm not sure. I forget the timeline exactly. On like Stalingrad, Russia starts pushing back. D-Day. I think Russia starts pushing back pretty hard, and then D-Day happens, and we just kind of steamroll in.
time.
The European powers couldn't fight though. They completely were steamrolled. The only reason Russia was probably able to push as far as it is, ignoring Lend-Lease and the economic assistance from the United States, was probably because there was so much pressure on the Western Front as well.
I think this is where oh man, I wish I was on this panel, man. Fuck, my history brain is going crazy. I think this is where Destiny gets this wrong. The pressure in the West wasn't... Okay, hold on. Let's see. Let's find out. When did the Battle of Stalingrad end? Oh, 43. Okay. When was D-Day? 44. So, yeah. Sorry, Destiny. You're a little bit off here. Yes, of course it helps, but I think the general history of it is that the Western Front was surprisingly easy because the Germans were getting absolutely fucking curb stomped by the Russians by that time.
I think we can talk about like the American production machine.
No, not production. It was U.S.
Are you discounting U.S. troops on the West? Because Stalin was desperate for those. Stalin begged. Stalin said he couldn't do it on his own. That's what he told Churchill and FDR. That's Stalin. He even said he couldn't do it on his own.
Even without Lend-Lease, like the U.S. like boots on the ground were essential. Like the push back into Europe didn't begin without U.S. blood happening. There was no amount of production, I think, that would have saved the rest of Europe from German encroachment.
This one's tough because the Battle of Stalingrad is the major turning point in the Russian battle, and D-Day happens a year later. Well, maybe months later. February to June. So February of 1943 into June of 1944. So basically a year later, D-Day happens. Because the Battle of Stalingrad is literally when Russia starts turning it around and is pushing back the Germans. So this is really bugging me, but that's
okay. So the analogy that I'm drawing here is just that sometimes if you allow people to war with each other for longer, if you put in a bit of wait time, you might allow them to deplete resources.
Yeah, but the scary thing about this is that the scary thing about this
is what if they curb stomp Russia? Now they have a fuck ton of resources. Right? If the war happens, now this is an also timeline I guess where like the war still happens the same way it does, except for D-Day happens later. And this is a little bit more up in the air because that's like when Russia's pushing back, but who knows how far they would have pushed back in.
This is like this is my last point, and then I'll let it go. Sorry. That we're engaging in like we're attempting to do so much guesswork here that there are to say that this is the most likely event is impossible. There's a million ways that this could have played out. It might have been that at some point Russia and Germany reach an uneasy peace, or maybe even align with each other, like they did when they cut up Poland, and were working on what was essentially an alliance. It wasn't just a non-aggression. It was essentially an alliance. They were agreeing to split territories and non-aggress against each other. It might have been,
and they had a trade deal. They had an oil trade deal. By the way, I don't know how many people know this, but one of the reasons why Germany even had fucking oil to fuel their fucking tanks is because Russia was sending them oil.
That they would have stepped back to that. It might have been that Hitler would have discovered nuclear weapons quicker than the United States. And a Germany that owns 90% of Europe and has nukes is a Germany that's going to continue to own 90% of Europe. It might have been that without the US being involved in the war, maybe Japan and Germany together are able to focus on Russia once the entire European continent, leaving the UK aside. Like, there's a million other ways that could have played out. To say that, like, oh, well, let's just wait and starve them out is one potential future, but I feel like there's 100 million other potential futures where, with the vast majority of them looking in, there's 999,999 horrible scenarios, only.
Because, by the way, we tried this method. That's what appeasement was at the start of the war. Or before the war started. Was, okay, you can take this, just don't continue. Okay, they had, Wilt Chamberlain? William Chamberlain's, had an agreement with the Germans to not invade anything else. Just take Czechoslovakia. Well, take Czech and leave Slovakia. Well, sorry, take the Sudetenlands in Czechoslovakia and you're done. That's it. That was the agreement. A month later, or something like that, that agreement was shattered and the rest of Czechoslovakia was invaded.
One of them ends up, good, possibly.
I think you're making a fantastic point. Like, you're right in that, like, the actual reality of the war, when we entered the war, that was, like, probably the best decision of the time. And it's only, like, looking back in hindsight and knowing and being able to review the strategic plans of these powers that you can make these sort of conjectures of, like, maybe in this alternate history it would have been effective, right? I think we've, like, sort of gone down a weird path because you're making, like, good points in that, like, it would not have necessarily been a good decision to wait it out at the time because we didn't have, like, the info to know that that would be effective. However, my point is that, just jumping into a war is not necessarily the kind of thing that you want to do. And with Ukraine, even if there is, like, war, even if Russia is invading Ukraine, we don't want to be the ones who are, like, the first people that Russia's encountering as far as troops that are battling them.
Russia's not going to send troops. If the U.S. puts troops, like if the U.S. puts a significant number of troops, like say 10,000 into Ukraine, Putin's not dumb. Putin doesn't want to die in a nuclear war. He's not going to invade. The question is, if we let a war happen, this is the great irony. By trying to prevent a war and doing the Chamberlain thing in appeasement, that's what's actually going to get us a war. That's actually what's going to get us Russian troops and tanks steamrolling into Kiev and other cities and looting and pillaging. And eventually, they will come for the West. I don't like this idea that we can choose between nipping them in the bud when it's easy or waiting until we're back at Berlin and now those are the battle lines. Why, unless you're on their side, why wouldn't you want our forces on their border instead of their forces getting closer to our borders, basically?
I just had a quick, Kevin, did you just say you're not worried about Putin shooting nuclears at the United States? Is that what you just said?
Hold on. I said if the U.S. puts troops in the
Didn't you just say that?
No,
Didn't you just say that?
This fucking stupid fuck. Shut the fuck up.
Alex,
if the US say it, hammer him on it, take him out, dude.
I had a bit of
context.
You did say that. So you just talk about you're so scared about all the rockets.
You're an idiot. I said they're aiming nukes at America. I said they're aiming nukes at America.
That's a good one, bud. You just got dunked on, and I'm the idiot. Good one.
Wait. Okay. If he's asked a question,
well, you just debunked yourself.
No, you're an idiot.
Okay,
that's fair. I'm an idiot, and you debunked yourself. That's fair. We can agree.
I never claimed. I never claimed.
Okay.
Dylan, I can't hear them when you keep interrupting. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so look, I want to be clear about something. I never claimed that Putin's planning to just nuke all American cities tomorrow. What Alex claimed earlier was, why aren't we working with Russia, this and that? My point was, you can't really work with a country that shares none of your values, competing economic interests, a different geopolitical project with Eurasianism, etc., completely different interests. Even if Russia was a democracy with Alexei Navalny, they'd still oppose NATO over just geopolitics anyway. My point was, they're aiming 8,000 nukes at America. I didn't say that Putin's planning to necessarily use them, but my point was friends don't aim nukes at each other. And this idea of Russia's our friend it harks back to the Madison Square Garden protests of, oh, well, Hitler's our friend. Why not peace? It ultimately boils down to appeasement.
It always goes back to Hitler. It always goes back to Hitler.
Isolationism, and it's ultimately pathetically subservient to a fascist dictator.
Are we in NATO? Are we in NATO with Russia, Kevin?
NATO is in opposition to Russia.
Okay,
Russia's
so we're in an alliance with Russia. Okay, so we are in an alliance.
No, are you stupid? Russia's not a part of NATO. You goober. You goober. Why are you even here?
Okay, why
are you even here? You don't know shit. You don't know shit.
I didn't know if Russia was a part of NATO. That's why I asked. I didn't know if Russia was a part of NATO. That's why I asked.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a problem. How do you not know that? How do you not know that? How do you not know that?
Every fact about NATO. I have to know every
But there are
fact
a whole
about
bunch of
Russia.
countries.
It's like the whole argument in this
one.
motherfucker.
Not to use nuclear
warheads.
warheads.
Okay. We
They are in the UN, to be fair. I can mix them up.
We got it.
Okay,
We got it. Okay, please.
Excuse me.
Wait. Okay, we gotta
shut
shut
certified goober.
We gotta shut this down for a second, okay? Because we have to move on, and I'm going to. So a few people raised their hand, including I just saw you, Christian. So the people who raised their hand are Parker, Adam, and Christian. So I'll start with Parker.
Oh my god, I put my hand up so fucking high.
I didn't see
it. Fine.
Well,
it's fine. Am I hidden behind your fucking microphone again, Dylan?
No, it's just raised your hand so high. It was out of screen, so I couldn't see it.
Well, I tried multiple different ways.
You'll be on the list too, Pixel. Okay, Parker.
So I kind of want to take the conversation a bit back to where we were in the beginning. I want to sort of combat this notion that like Russia could actually like feasibly like have enough political or economic power to steamroll through multiple different nations without a response from NATO at all. I don't think that they could get to the borders of like Poland or a different country like that, and then we'd still have people saying like, oh, I don't want to respond. I don't think that we'd have any type of response like that. I definitely think that people are like would notice that if they're trying to go like invade Ukraine, they would probably try to do that to other countries as well. But I don't think they have the political or economic stability to like start that type of war or start that type of interaction.
Parker, you'd be surprised by the anti-imperialists out there that can't wait to cheer for Russian imperialism. There are a lot of people that would say, what right do we have to protect Poland? They'd be fine with waiving NATO obligations. Right.
Well, that's an extremely small amount of people. The overwhelming majority of people would, if they like invaded Ukraine, would say that.
We have to end this quickly now and move our ships to
Wait,
the.
But we didn't do this with Crimea or Georgia. Wait, historically, we didn't do this with Crimea or with Georgia. No, didn't we all just sit by and like, wow, that's really bad, and then that's it?
Well, like to that specific degree, I mean, I do think that's like a valid point, 100%. But like when we're talking about like Ukraine versus like Crimea, I think there's a big distinction between at least those times, because especially like in 2014.
Should we just ignore
I mean, I wasn't around at that time. I don't know
because
the type of conversation.
If I go into Britain,
I'm a little too young.
I lose a lot of things.
I'm 19.
Sure, okay, that's
yeah, no, I mean, well, I wasn't around. Like, I didn't like actually like pay attention to politics at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure you remember. I'm sure you heard at least one time in school. You probably heard like Russia is in Georgia, and then I'm sure kids in class like Georgia the state, and I'm like, no, Georgia the country. It's like, oh, okay, and then like we never heard about it again because
heard about Crimea, not Georgia at all.
Really?
I genuinely
okay. Well, yeah, I mean, like we just don't care much about foreign policy. Like Ukraine is another thing. Like anything that Russia gets its hands on, it's not going to give back. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they started some like front like into Ukraine, people would have a response. We've already had a response.
But they already are.
Troops, stuff like that.
They're already in Luhansk and Donetsk.
Well, don't they just have troops at the border? They haven't actually like.
No, they've taken about 80,000.
There's yeah, this guy's too young. I'm okay. Whatever. This is, no one in here knows anything about fucking history. They've taken. There's already a Ukrainian invasion once before.
Thousand square kilometers in the east, Luhansk and Crimea, dude. And the thing is, they're nuclear power. Nobody suggested going in by force and taking them back. The problem is, once they get territory, as Destiny said, that's gone. Like, they're nuclear power. We're never getting that back. So why not nip it in the bud and stop them from going further, as opposed to letting them take more, and then now we have this debate again, right? That's
how do you stop them? How do you stop them?
We're not necessarily letting them take more. We still have like economic sanctions and like weapons for defense.
Okay, So okay, so who was that directed towards, Kevin? And then I need to get back to the list because there's other people.
Yeah. Well, I guess that question in general, it wasn't so much directed towards Parker. Parker was just kind of asking some clarifying questions. My point was just more general. Why don't we, this is the question, I guess I'll direct this to Taftudge, to Conspiracy Castle, and to Christian in particular. Why would you guys prefer to forfeit Ukraine and then have to deal with the Russian aggression when the battle lines are closer to us? Why not nip it in the bud, just put in some troops there and send a message to Putin to say, look, we're not going to tolerate wars against democracies in Europe, because we know if we let this go, it'll be another one and another one, because they've demonstrated this with Georgia in 2008 and Crimea and the rest of Ukraine in 2014.
I'm gonna have Christian respond because Christian raised his hand and hasn't been able to talk in a while, so I'm gonna have Christian respond to that question. So
yeah, I'll be very quick before I respond to that question. We have to deal with this argument that if you're...
This guy's gonna say nothing about you. This would be a panel to be really good with 6 people, I think. There's a lot of strong personalities, or maybe even 4 to 5, but fuck, there's so many.
I can give you 2 reasons that are not at all pro-Russia, but are instead pro-other things, pro-common sense rather, that would lead us skeptical to such incursions. Number 1, the question of moral obligation towards other countries, which I mentioned earlier, which wasn't really answered. Number 2, the erosion of American diplomatic capital through continued aggression. And number 3, the continuation of American imperialism, which has caused destruction and chaos across the world. Those are 3 reasons why someone could be reasonably skeptical of going into this with a more aggressive stance that had nothing to do with being pro-Russia. And the assertion that if you are against this, or some kind of force towards Russia in this circumstance, you are pro-Russia, is absolutely an ad hominem of the lowest sort. So let's not use that argument anymore. Now, as for the battle lines and everything, look, I'm not saying let Russia seize Ukraine. I'm asking, I'm saying the European powers, some of whom have, again, different degrees of moral obligation and different degrees of interest in ensuring that Ukraine remains in sovereign hands, they have the ability to act. I'm particularly concerned about the United States' obligation, or lack of obligation, lack thereof of obligation, towards Ukraine. And really, I have no problem with the United States using diplomatic capital to and even what Taft said. I mean, I've been listening very closely. I have no problem even supplying them with weapons. Now, the problem is America has supplied people with weapons in the past, and they've gotten into the wrong hands. So I typically tend to be very skeptical of that. But I have no problem even supplying them with weapons. And I do not think Biden should have pulled out our diplomatic personnel, and neither does Zelensky. And Zelensky was very mad at him for that. So there are steps we can take to ensure that Ukraine remains somewhat in America's sphere of geopolitical influence. But those steps should not at all elevate to the level of military aggression, even if it's just placing troops on Ukraine's border. The United States has no obligation to do so.
So Christian, who do you think is the imperial power in the Ukraine-Russia dynamic? Do you think it's Russia, or do you think it's America?
That's an obvious question. Obviously, Russia's the imperial power, but one's imperialism does not negate another's imperialism. America has been an imperialist nation for many decades, and that needs to be dealt with.
How does helping a sovereign country resist Russian imperialism? How is that imperialist?
Okay. That's a straw man. I just gave you a few examples of how we can actually help them without putting troops on the ground. Putting boots on the ground is another example of American imperialism. Having diplomatic personnel is not. Yes, absolutely.
Really? So defending a sovereign country that asks, their sovereign government asks for help. It's not like we're just invading them. Their sovereign country, their sovereign government begs for military support, and you say, we can't help you. That would be imperialism. Is that
No, I didn't say. You are pretending like I'm saying that you cannot help them at all. I'm saying there are more ways to help Ukraine.
I mean,
there are more ways to help Ukraine. There are more ways to help Ukraine.
You're characterizing sending troops there to deter an invasion. You're characterizing that as imperialism.
In the context of the American global project, absolutely. Having thousands of troops situated across the world, across Europe, in countries that we are absolutely not even at war with. Yes, I absolutely think that's imperialism of a certain kind of sort.
That's dumb.
It is imperialism.
Sorry, but that's a really stupid position to have. Because imperialism is going in and taking over other people's shit, other people's countries without their permission.
That's one function of it.
Isn't that colonialism? Imperialism.
I know where this is about to go. This is about to go into is any kind of foreign influence imperialism. And an example that you could bring up, which might be a good one, is China's investments in other nations. Is that considered imperialism? So they're like, hey, we're gonna build all this shit for you, and you just gotta be friendly towards us, you know, like these kind of soft ties. Is that imperialism? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Yeah, it's kind of that's a tough one. I'm not gonna build. Well, I'm gonna build infrastructure. This. No steel over here for no fucking reason. This. We do get a lot of like random ass resources that we probably don't even need, but that's fucking why? This one. Okay, we're good. We're okay with that. Probably. Anyways, sorry, what the fuck? What was I thinking? Oh, yeah, is like what China does, is that like imperialism? Is what, like what is imperialism is obviously like kind of what this is going to come down to. That's a tough one. It's a tough one to answer. Oh, cap.
Wait. No, it's too loud. It's too loud. Okay, I can't hear myself think. And if I can't hear myself think, then nobody can hear shit. So I'm going to have Kevin respond, then I'm gonna have Christian respond, and then we're gonna move on to Pixel, Adam, then Taft. Does anybody want their like name written down? But of course you can like intervene at some point. Taft, I just said your name.
What?
Yes, you. But he called out like 4 people. I can't have every person respond.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I be on the list? Can you add me to the list, please?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
The last resort.
But do I get to respond now or later?
Make her respond later.
Later.
No,
but it would actually have to be later.
Don't
It would
listen
have
to
to.
Steven. He's mean.
Wait.
Yeah, he is mean, but I'm also mean. So,
You're terrible.
Christian, you respond, then no, Kevin responded, then
Yeah.
Christian,
We have no open.
Word. We got to move on to Pixel, then Adam. Okay.
Okay. So basically, calling the American president, say America sends, say Volodymyr Zelensky asks for say 8,000 troops, and Biden agrees to that. And of course, Zelensky's democratically elected leader of Ukraine. You can cope about him being a reality TV guy or whatever. Trump is a reality TV guy to Alex. That I'm not saying that to Christian. But here's the thing. So you go and say you put 8,000 troops in there, and they're there, say, as a deployment of, similar to what we did in Canada with Operation Unifier there, and they're just there as basically a deterrent against the Russian invasion. My sort of point was that that's not an imperialist act. That's actually a consensual a defense agreement between 2 sovereign countries. And so the only reason why you could think of that as imperialist is if you've unfortunately fallen for Russian disinformation and propaganda, and you can say you're not pro-Russia. I don't think you like Putin. I'm just saying that the consequence of your inaction is necessarily pro-Putin in how that would manifest in reality, because you would render Ukraine vulnerable to an invasion. This is why we call it peace through strength, not peace through relativism or peace through weakness. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to make a point. Was it imperialistic during the Afghan when we were leaving Afghanistan and we dropped a missile and we killed 4 innocent children? I mean, was that
collateral damage? That wasn't done on purpose.
So that's not imperialistic. So those people when they died, they're just collateral damage.
It's bad to go after ISIS-K. It's bad to go after ISIS-K.
But killing 4 children or ISIS-K, I didn't know. I didn't know children can be an ISIS-K.
I want to hear from Christian because you don't even understand what collateral damage is. I
understand 100% what collateral damages. I'm just saying, you're saying that America's not imperialistic. Yes, I do. You're saying that we're not imperialistic, though. Yet we're the one that go into in the Middle East. We're very imperialistic. Okay.
Alex, I want to make sure Christian goes.
We're the ones that kill kids. You love it. There's just collateral damage when 4-year-olds get killed. Look at you're smiling. It's so cute.
I'm smiling because you're a goober, dude.
Okay, Christian.
So
you're a goober.
So what Superpower Broadcasting is saying? Yes. Conquering a country and staying there, obviously, is going to be a function of imperialism. but imperialism is a multifunction, multi-purpose concept. So conquering a country through military force certainly is imperialistic. But going into a country, I don't care if it was consensual or otherwise, and projecting hegemony, projecting power through military force is an extension of the American global project, which has been imperialistic. And as laws of logic work, a premise is the basis for a conclusion, and the premise of America's intervention in Ukraine is going to be its general imperialistic project, even if that particular action is not as severe or not as, as blatant as other acts of American imperialism have been in the past. So again, it's from the same family, even if it has a different face, so to speak. And also, again, this argument that I am somehow in Putin's pocket because I may have a position that he may favor is nonsense. You should not. You should not analyze the position on the basis. You should not analyze a position's moral correctness or in moral wrongness on the basis of who supports it. Rather, analyze the position on the merits itself. If a dictator were to support the proposition that 2 + 2 is 4, that does not make that proposition any more wrong than if Mother Teresa were to support it. It's about the proposition's inherent correctness. That's what we look at. And even if Putin does think that, obviously doesn't think that America should get involved because that would obviously be a wrench in his plans, that does not necessarily mean that position is tainted because he supports it. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
So you said the consent.
No, Kevin, sorry. We got to move on. There's so many people that have to talk. We got to throw it over to Pixel, then Adam.
I'd just like to add some further context as to what is going on, like, in a geopolitical context here, because if we're talking about imperialism, we are living in a time right now where basically everything that is happening is going to be political posturing. Nobody is, like, seriously going to launch a nuke knowing that any sort of war at this point is going to result in basically runaway climate change, which is bad for everyone, even if we're already on that path. So understanding why Russia's posturing towards Ukraine is maybe seeming so aggressive now has to include the fact that China is also an imperialist power moving towards Russia from the south through the stands. And so Russia at this point are feeling like they have to make some sort of force to make sure that they retain their perceived power, or at least their perceived position in the global kind of geopolitical mess.
Fucking headphones are dying there, bud.
At this point, some of it is aggressive, and some of it at the moment feels extremely uncomfortable.
Ram kangaroo, more like ram my fucking asshole.
Media as well, because that serves its own narrative purpose in America. It serves a narrative purpose here in Australia as well, because obviously, we have an interesting where America's shit little brother, but we are also in like the realm of China's geopolitical influence. And so like you can't just look at this between America and Russia, because it is so much more complex than that. And the reasons that Russia are moving into Ukraine is because of resources, but also just for the political posturing. Anyway, I just wanted to provide the context to make it a bit bigger.
Okay. Next, we're gonna throw it over to Adam.
Sure. So a couple of points have been made, which I'd like to clarify. So first off, to Christian, of course, no one said that you're in the pocket of Putin. However, you have to realize that the positions you advocate for, they align almost perfectly with Russian geopolitical goals. So I mean, that's some people. Based on what I've heard, I know that you aren't. I strike me as a genuine guy. However, some people might interpret this as you being pro-Putin because you're aligned so well. So I think that's the issue there. As to whether the US has a moral obligation to help Ukraine, well, after we have essentially, by we I mean the Western world and also the US. So let's talk about the US. So since the US has already promised Ukraine that they're going to help, that they have made commitments about Ukraine's territorial inviolability, that Crimea belongs to Ukraine, that Donbass should return to Ukraine. They made all these commitments, promises.
Okay, it looks like we're cooperating now.
At this point, they came back and say, "What? Yoink? Nah." Then I think that would be actually breaking America's moral obligation. So whether you like it or not, these promises were made and have been made for 8 years. To walk back on them now, I think would be just horrendous. And regarding the other point that made,
what the fuck are you repairing?
Just
Goober?
Let's wait until they tire each other out and then swoop in.
Would you trip and fall?
I mean, I guess you can do that from a chessboard military strategic perspective, but waiting until the two sides tire each other out, I mean, that's just millions more dead. So why not intervene? Generally, during a conflict, as collateral. So why not intervene now? Of course, as others said early on. Of course, troops on the ground will not happen though. So let's. I think we can actually stop talking about this. American troops, at least, will not go to Ukraine. What we're doing is deterrence,
inaccessible region,
which is in line with the US's moral obligations at this point, and contrary to Russian interests, which.
So I have to go through.
Here's my problem actually, which is also my problem with a substantial amount of the online left. It's possible to oppose Russian imperialism and U.S. imperialism at the same time. However, if this is not the case here, but if your two choices, if choice A and choice B were, you can either get U.S. imperialism in Ukraine or Russian imperialism in Ukraine, then the U.S. imperialism would be better than the Russian imperialism, because at least the U.S. is a democracy and Russia is an authoritarian country. Of course, this is not the case. This is a false dichotomy, because this is not the case in Ukraine. So there's no imperialism. It's an U.S. and West-oriented country asking for help, and us promising for 8 fucking years that we're gonna help, and now it's time to show your hands, basically.
Okay. Next we have
more Dockers or more. What the hell do I need?
Destiny. Then we're probably gonna look at ending statements for everybody.
Sure.
Taft.
I'm honestly not sure if people here disagree like that much, because I think in general we agree that we do have some obligation to help Ukraine. Most people agree with that, and that help should come at the very least in the form of, sending arms to Ukraine, or helping to negotiate a peace deal to bring people to the table, or to station troops around, if not necessarily on the border, because it doesn't seem like we're going to be doing that necessarily. But I mean, I think that there's this analogy, like if someone were to pluck a blade of grass from my lawn, I don't risk nuclear war with them over that. But if they come to my lawn the next day with a machine to rip up the entire lawn, well then, yeah, that's a serious problem. So this if Russia's showing intention to invade Europe, then yeah, there's a serious problem that is going to
They've already invaded Europe.
Yeah.
Georgia 2008.
I don't think Georgia is all of Europe. I mean,
I didn't say it was all of Europe.
What about Crimea? Wait, what about Crimea?
Yeah, Crimea, Donbass, Lugansk.
Right. Okay. The point is, they're not taking state by state here.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, just parts of state. Just irredentalism. Just parts of state. Just chauvinism, revanchism, that kind of stuff, right?
Okay, let's let her finish her statement.
I don't think that Russia's going to try to conquer Europe. But if they do try to conquer Europe, yeah, in that scenario, we should go to war with them.
Okay, and we're gonna wrap up with Destiny. And you know what? I'm just gonna put Alex Stein at the end. Why not?
Hell yeah.
There was 3 or 4 different conversation threads earlier, but they're kind of winding down now. So you know what? We should help Ukraine. That's all I'm gonna say, rather than reopen up all the other lines of argumentation, I guess.
Okay. Alex Stein? You're muted. You have muted yourself.
Duh, sorry, you couldn't hear me that whole time. Okay, everybody made fun of me because I didn't know Russia was not in NATO. I guess I should have known that. But we are in the United Nations together, so I want to make that so I'm not a total dummy. But look at it. There's a movie called...
You probably should know.
Listen, Beardo, let me just say my deal, okay? Listen, there's a movie called Charlie Wilson's War. What we did is we funded the Taliban. We created the Taliban to fight, and we gave... No, listen, we gave...
Taliban was formed in 1994, Alex.
This is the previous version of the Taliban.
1994.
Okay, they weren't called the Taliban. So you're saying that did we not arm rebels in Afghanistan to
went
fight
to
Russia?
the Northern Alliance.
No, listen, they weren't called the Taliban.
All the Mujahideen went to the Northern
Alliance. You're being so
Taliban.
annoying because you know that we funded
because you're just spewing out false
it
narratives.
wasn't the Taliban. Excuse me. We gave Afghanistan rebels weapons to fight Russia because we're not going to directly fight.
against a communist empire.
Listen, okay, let me just make my point. So you agree that we gave weapons to Afghanistan rebels?
The Mujahideen, not the Taliban. You claim the Taliban. Okay, Taliban was formed in 1984 in Pakistan, dude.
The previous version of Taliban. So we're pretty sure everybody.
This is so stupid.
No, almost all those guys went to the Northern Alliance, dude. You're full of shit. You're full of shit.
You don't know. It's not full of shit, dude. I know exactly. I'm not talking about it.
You thought Russia was in NATO, Alex.
Listen. I said I asked
verified Uber pill.
Listen, you.
Conspiracy monger.
It's just funny because you want me to explain my point, but let me just say the
I think
point.
he's not letting you because he's scared. I think he's scared of the truth you have to bring. Yeah, don't let him interrupt
you just don't want me to stop. So what happens is we funded the Mujahideen. So we basically fought a cold war with Russia. If Russia wouldn't retaliate for that, we are never going to get in a war with Russia. So you're saying, oh, we're so scared. You got all these weapons pointed at us. You got all these rockets. They're going to shoot at us. Yeah, you even admit that you're not afraid of that. So listen.
Wait, this isn't about fear. This is about value.
Okay, I'm just saying what you said. So listen, at the end of the day,
you're just parroting.
Please end.
No, I'm not. I'm not pro-Russia. I'm just based in reality because I know that we've had more military interactions. We've had more military actions with Russia that are more intense than what's happening in the Ukraine, and we still didn't have a war. So with this interaction right now, I don't believe it's going to lead to a war. So we don't need to put any troops there. So if you think, oh, by symbolically putting a couple troops there, that's going to save us, you're an imbecile because the military-industrial complex, the United States is the main country. We have more military bases in foreign countries than any other country in the world.
Ukraine, so Alex. Yeah, I'd rather have 800 U.S. bases than 800 Russian bases.
Listen, all you have to do is look at how the Americans, how we treat our veterans when they come back. They're all hooked on drugs. They have a high suicide rate.
Yeah, how's that going in Russia? They're all on crocodile,
so if you think that our military is going to go to the Ukraine and help them, then their whole military is going to be all suicidal and depressed.
Russia's a suicide, abortion-laden,
well, why don't we just go over there? We'll send General Mattis up there, and we'll just give them all PTSD, and they can all suicide themselves. Would you like that? Would you like that better? Would that be better? Because America's so good at everything. Because we're so good at the imperialistic nature of America.
Okay.
Well, I'm saying, what do you think the Americans do? Do you think the treatment of veterans is correct in America? Do you think we treat our veterans correct?
Wait a second.
Yes.
This is so irrelevant. Yeah, but yes, better than most countries.
That's how. See, you're not based in reality. Then that just shows you. Just look at the suicide rates of.
Wait. I understand both of you love each other very much, and you just can't stop complimenting each other. But we do need to go into ending statements, and I'm going to start with Taft. Or not. I guess we're going to go with Kevin Castley, because Taft can't how to stream. Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, so basically to close here, I think we should just reiterate a couple of points. This isn't a debate about what should we do to stop a Russian invasion or what should we do to prevent a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia has already invaded Europe in 2008. You can look up, if you haven't heard of it before, I would encourage everybody to look up the Russian invasion of Georgia. Now, Georgia's badass. Georgia was actually involved in Iraq at the time, and they also repelled Russia, but we could have helped prevent that whole cluster crap from happening in the first place by actually having troops there as a deterrent. Or better yet, if you don't want to put troops in, and I'll say this, if you don't want to put troops in Ukraine, there is another option. If you don't want to put troops in Georgia, there is another option where you don't actually have to put any US troops. Put them in NATO, and now Putin won't screw around, because then you've got Article 5, and now you get troops there if Russia invades. So the best way to deal with this would be to incorporate them in NATO. That would require altering NATO's terms so that you can put countries in NATO that have territorial disputes. One reason why Putin took these territories, South Ossetia and Abkhazia and Georgia, was to prevent them from being part of NATO. We need to alter the terms of NATO to make it easier for countries to join. Additionally, we're talking about stopping Russia's further advance into Ukraine. We're not talking about stopping an invasion. I am of the opinion, and I think that reality bears out and the lessons of history bear out very well, that by preemptively and proactively putting troops as a deterrent there, we stop a war from happening. The great irony in all of this is that all of these people tonight that have fear-mongered about a war, the only war that's going to happen with Russia is if nobody helps Ukraine and then Putin takes the W, goes in there and invades the country. And now we've got tens of thousands of people dead that could have been alive. We have a country of 44 million people. Their hopes, dreams, and destinies have been forfeited to fascist empire because we didn't feel like putting a few thousand troops in the Ukraine. It's an embarrassment. Look, I've got my criticisms of Justin Trudeau, but right now he is totally one-upping Joe Biden, and Joe Biden should be 100% entirely
$120 million to Ukraine alone with
the
interest.
Fact that Canada, you know, despite us spending not that much on the military, we put double the troops into Ukraine, and it's not enough, but we need to do more, and we are better off to nip in the bud and to stop a war before it starts than to accept a new status quo with Russia, with Russian troops in Lviv. And thank you. It's been interesting.
For everybody in chat, the links to everybody on the show has been placed in chat if you're wondering who everybody is, and including their marker on the screen. I'm now going to throw it over to Taft if they can learn how to stream.
Thanks, Dylan. To conclude, I agree that with the fundamental premise that we should help Ukraine. And I think that the priority needs to be in helping Ukraine negotiate and finding a peaceful solution. And peace should be pursued aggressively, you know, at all possible cost, right? That's true. Not at all possible cost. You should pursue peace aggressively. Peace is really important. War is really bad. And so we should try to deter war. Part of the way you deter war is by sending arms to Ukraine and to making sure Ukraine doesn't seem like a good target for invasion. And moreover, but yeah, I mean, that's my fundamental point. We should avoid war, and we should try to negotiate a peaceful solution.
Okay, next we're gonna throw it over to Pixel.
I agree that we should avoid war, but we are now living in a time when nobody really wants to outright nuke each other. But we are going to have to continue to navigate both soft and hard imperialism. I'm talking about like Australia offering aid to Pacific countries, right? That is political influence and power, and these things are just going to keep happening. So I'm not sure if the idea of nipping something in the bud is particularly valuable here, because these things are just going to keep coming up as we move into the future as like the very intertwined.
Do I have not enough?
World that we are now. That being said, I do think that depending on your ideology and mine being relatively pro-democracy, just as being a woman, that is the most comfortable, I think, ideology for me and how it has worked out for women globally, which is why, sorry, I'm getting muddled over my words, but basically, I think that any show of support for democracy and sovereignty is valid in this situation, navigating like global forces that continue to butt heads.
Go this way.
Thanks.
Go this
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Parker.
Okay, so I specifically, I don't think anyone, or actually, I'll just say this. I don't think that we should leave Ukraine to Russia. I definitely think that we should provide some sort of help, 100%. I just think that we should do that through diplomacy, sanctions, and defensive weapons and whatnot. Obviously, if there's a further aggression from Russia, then we should definitely talk about how we should engage in at least a little bit more of intervention.
I wonder if I should do...
but it's really just dependent on what we think is necessary in order to stop Russian aggression towards Ukraine. And I don't think that the best way in order to do that is just by sending troops. I think that can also bolster Russian propaganda and the fact that like NATO can be aggressing towards Russian borders. I don't know how far to an extent that would go, but I definitely think that's something that we should take into account when we're talking about sending troops there.
Wonderful. I'm going to throw it over to Destiny.
Man, I'm going to be honest, I'm only here to hear Conspiracy Castle's closing statement, but yeah, I think we should support Ukraine. I think that Russia is very scared of having even just a functioning democracy on their border. I think that's probably something that's worth protecting, both for Ukrainian interests and for broader U.S. geopolitical interests, and for the broader interests of all of the countries in the world that have decided to align themselves with U.S. interests. I think that we should show that we have the capability of defending countries when the time comes, when we're called upon to do it, and this is as good a time as any to stop Russian aggression.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Christian.
What the fuck did I...
Well, you know, I think we've seen a lot of compelling arguments tonight. Personally, look, the American global project has to be a project of peace, not of war, not of imperialism, not of endless expansionism. It has to be one of peace. And to any extent that's possible with this situation, I support. If that means not pulling out our unessential diplomatic personnel from the situation with Zelensky condemned as, demeaning the role of a diplomatic personnel to this kind of situation. That means keeping them there. That means trying to, as Tav said, negotiate peace. That means some level of humanitarian or even some level of military aid, which may mean weapons or whatever. Whatever that is short of actually having boots on the ground and projecting the aggressive show of force that the American political project internationally has projected for the past 20 plus years, anything short of that I am okay with. But I primarily want this to be a situation where all sides come out in peace. Russia obviously will not be satisfied until it can continue its geopolitical expansion unabated. That's what they want. I mean, that's why Putin does these military exercises all around, his area and near Finland and everything, because he wants to show that he is going to be the alpha who will reclaim the glory of Russia. And so anything that America or NATO even can do to moderate that and make sure that it's peacefully resolved, I support. I still have the question though about the moral obligation. I've seen tonight moral obligation sourced in abstractions.
I want to go get Hawaii
America
because then it helps me open up a.
America has an obligation to its treaties and to its citizens. And those both are very tangible things. And so perhaps if Ukraine was in NATO, that'd be a different story. But regardless, it's been a very good conversation on this issue.
Throwing it now.
What are you talking?
Wow, thank you, Destiny, for staying for my closing statement. I appreciate that. Okay, and listen, guys, I should have known, Kevin, that you're defending Justin Trudeau, who's like, Mr. Blackface. Yeah, that makes sense. You think he's like handling... Well, but you did say what he's doing in Ukraine is so good. So if you're so against him, yeah, you're going to be a hypocrite. Now you're saying he's doing a great job in the Ukraine. So that just shows that you're a hypocrite. But it doesn't matter about that. It doesn't matter. Listen, this comes down to.
This guy's fired out of a cannon, dude. Doesn't even make any sense.
You guys, it comes down to the military-industrial complex that is influencing this, and you're going to say, "Oh, that doesn't exist." Oh. But guys, they're taking up such a huge part of our budget. Goes into the military-industrial complex, and when you look at it, what we get is the juice worth the squeeze. When you look at the Vietnam War, when you look at the war in the Middle East, Ukraine better hope and pray that we don't come over there and help them. Because I promise you, I swear to you, we will go up there and mess it up worse than it already is. Because what is happening right now is political theater. And Putin knows that Joe Biden he's about 75% there. You know what I mean? He's sitting, he's just, not really in full control. So what he's doing, he's playing literal political theater. This is war games. And what it's done is it's stirred us up. It's got us.
Who knows what these boats are? Will they ever make it here? I don't know.
Distracting us from the real problems. From the idea that we shoot $80,000 Javelin missiles are shot by a guy that only makes $70,000 a year towards a guy that doesn't make $80,000 in his whole entire life. So who benefits from that scenario? The military-industrial complex. And those are the ones that are encouraging us to go to the Ukrainian border. We don't need to protect Ukraine. We can't protect them. Russia's not going to take them over. They might encroach there to sort of put us in a position and make us look weak, because that's what they want to do on the world scale. But all of this, like I said, at the end of the day, is just political theater. There's going to be no bombs. America's the only one ever to drop a bomb. We're all going to be safe in our bed. We're all going to be able to stream and get our donations. And speaking of that, I got $300 in donations from Oliver tonight. Thank you, Oliver. I appreciate that. That's my statement.
I'm going to now throw it over to Adam something to wrap us up.
Yeah, so first off, conspiracy. Castle, it's a nice cat you have, by the way, the black and white.
Thank you.
I would also be careful because
I hear this is Angus.
I'd be careful though. Cats are controlled by government satellites, as we all know.
Real quick, I have toxoplasmosis. No, Adam, I don't want to cut you off, but from dealing with the fecal matter, it's called toxoplasmosis, crazy cat lady syndrome, and I have it. It makes you more like a cat. So do not. Yes, I have toxoplasmosis. So
okay. So let me just clarify something. In the future, during outros and intros, you cannot interrupt anybody's statement or talk during it. Just throwing that out there, Adam.
Wait, can anybody interrupt?
And muted. Continue.
I was going to ask why he was interrupting.
Yeah, so to sum up, I think we were pretty much all in agreement, well, most of us anyway, about the whole situation. There will be no troops on the ground, it seems, only in neighboring NATO countries, which is fair. This is going to be a game of deterrence. I personally, right now, it looks like Russia will not invade Ukraine, although I might have to eat crow on this, we'll see. But in case they do, that will be a different story. Then they will be embroiled in a essentially an insurgency war in Ukraine. Otherwise, the U.S.
Insurgency, I know that game.
The points. So
invade all three of these at one time.
The US, I believe, does have a moral obligation to help Ukraine. Since, they kind of promised, and the West in general, NATO allied countries did promise support, have been promising support for 8 years. And now it would be a bit.
Buckle my shoe.
It might leave some bad taste in some people's mouths for the West to just like say after 8 years, well, nope, sorry. Now that the heat has been turned up a bit, then we're like, yeah, okay, fuck this. So that would actually, and that would hurt Western geopolitical interest in the long run as well, because our future prospective allies against countries like China or Russia, much worse places than the West, as imperialistic the West can be.
Suck on my toe.
Countries that might be in the future aligned with the West as opposed to China or Russia might look at the Ukraine scenario and say, oh wait, like the second push comes to shove, the West fucking just backs out, whatever, you're on your own. And I think that would be devastating geopolitically for the West in the future. So let's not wait until it's too late. Continue supplying weapons. That's the best we can do for now. And if there will be troops on the ground, that will be the troops of other European countries, which I think is completely fair. This is, at the end of the day, a European issue in which the US is heavily involved in. So, yes, that's my closing statement. We should help. It's a good thing that we help, etc.
Also, I'd like to stay before the next topic. I'm seeing a lot of energy in chat for an Alex Stein versus CTV match. That would be a
bring it on! And I had to make one clarify. Oliver Wall just donated $405. He clarified in the chat. Thank you, Oliver, for those donations.
Wonderful from Oliver. Okay, so we're gonna go into the next topic for everybody watching.
Oh look!
This Sunday is movie night on our channel. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the Dylan Birds TV Discord. But to keep out all the unfavorables, we'll only allow it for the Patreon subs and Twitch subs, so we don't let any ye scum in there, as in ye supporters. Anyway, let's go into the next topic. The next topic, now I'm actually going to give you guys some discretion. The next topic is supposed to be about Biden's interaction with the reporter. But I wanted to ask you guys, would you rather talk about that or the new thing, the new news, and it has to do with the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court justice resigning? What would be more interesting to you guys?
I think both interesting.
Is there much to say on the Supreme Court justice resigning?
Would be a little bit more interesting.
Okay,
it's a little bit more.
Son of a cock tease.
I am a well-known expert on the Supreme Court of America, so.
Yeah, we can talk about the Supreme Court. That's a good one.
Supreme Court? You want that? Okay, we'll do the Supreme Court then. So.
Is that the regular court but with sour cream and tomatoes and lettuce, or is that?
Yes, it's that one.
It's the okay, yeah.
Okay.
I don't even want to take Britain because I just want to be shit. I don't want to go back. Don't send me back.
Has decided that it's time to hang up the gavel at the ages of 83, and so soon we will see a fight in Congress, a confirmation fight on whether the Supreme Court justice that.
Hey, Canada, why didn't you take the territory that we should be taking? Well, because I don't want to go back.
Court justice news.
What? What'd you say?
What do you think of Biden's upcoming nomination pick? Are you excited for him to pick somebody more to the left? Do you want him to pick somebody more moderate? What are you expecting? I'm going to start with Parker.
Okay, so I definitely think that Biden should pick someone at least a little more to the left, at least as what we saw with Breyer, but this was definitely something that we saw coming. Obviously, she wants to resign at a time in which a liberal can replace him with another liberal or whatnot, so it's not really that surprising. So that's really all my take is right now, at least. I just want to hear what other people have to say.
Okay. Destiny?
Yeah, I don't know what more there is to say. I hopefully that he nominates somebody more a little bit to the left to balance the squad out a little bit, but I don't know if any picks have been discussed yet, so yeah, it'll be cool when it happens.
Okay. Yes, I kept Destiny muted so he couldn't give his opinion on the topics. Yes, I did that. Okay, we're gonna throw that over to Taft.
Yeah, I mean, I think the progressive wing, the liberals, the Democrats, are worried about midterms. They're worried that if the Senate changes, they're not going to be able to get through their Supreme Court picks through. And so, yeah, they're going to put in a Supreme Court pick, and Biden's promised it to be a black woman, so probably see that. We'll see. They're definitely fighting lawyers right now to see who's done well. And I guess I don't think it's bad or good necessarily. It's just like the obvious power politics play. And they got Breyer out because they knew that this was the time to do it. And I know there was previous worry with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. People were pressuring her to retire, and she didn't. And then she got replaced by a conservative pick. So yeah, it seems par for the course for the Democrats to be taking this strategy.
Dylan is muted.
Oh, we haven't taken any of Mexico.
I'm gonna throw it over to Christian.
Yeah, so obviously there's not much controversial about a president picking the Supreme Court. This is his constitutionally ordained duty. What is particularly egregious about what happened recently is that Biden vowed to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court on the basis of her being black and being a woman. Now, obviously, this was also a campaign promise he made as well. What I find ridiculous is that he is going to nominate someone on the basis of identity to a institution which is not concerned about identity at all. It's concerned actually with the faithful functions of preserving the Constitution and faithfully adjudicating the law. So what he really is doing is he's challenging the institution's own foundational principles by trying to incorporate his identity politics-based pick into the institution, which is dangerous. But also, again, I think that it's also bad for the woman who will be picked, because obviously that lady, no matter how qualified she might be, because Biden has vowed to pick a black woman, will be seen as a diversity hire. So now you have, not only are you violating the first principles of the institution, the Supreme Court, you're also castigating the name of the person by not explicitly picking them for their merits but for their identity. So it's an entire cluster F, you know what I'm saying? And I think that Biden should be ashamed of himself. Anyone who's pushing these ideas should be ashamed of themselves, and that the Supreme Court should have a justice, liberal or conservative, who is placed there on the basis of their merits, period.
Wonderful. Now we're going to throw it over
I don't know what happened, but
Kevin Castley.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So just the
oh no, Germany owns all of Britain. Oh god.
From the last closing in this.
During the intros to the next.
What happened? I don't know.
But this is the final time you could respond to anything of the last topic. Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you. I just want to respond very quickly, just before I go into the point about Breyer, to something that the Crazy Cat gentleman said. He said something about me basically advocating for what was it? Something of the sort of that there would be war or something, or that Putin was going to use nukes against Russia or against the United States. I just wanted to clarify very quickly on that. I never, just to be clear here, I never specifically said that Putin was planning to use nukes. My whole point was that in this particular case, that having U.S. troops in Ukraine would be a deterrent against Russia going in there, that this is about Ukraine, that an American invasion, an invasion of America would follow if you abandon the rest of the world. It was also about a moral stance to defend Ukraine. Not imperialist. Anyway, we can move on to this segment. So on this segment, the point about the Supreme Court, this might be a little bit of a hot take from me, but I'm generally pretty center left on social politics and center right on economics. I think that for Joe Biden, somebody I've been very critical of, I made a video calling for him to be impeached after he bungled the surrender to the Taliban. I do think here that he should actually pick somebody who is further to the left than me, actually. And I think that because the Supreme Court has been allowed to skew so far to the right in recent years under Trump, that it would naturally be a balance, and that what you would see is that the consequence of that would be that it would somewhat counter out to be closer to where I'm at, generally speaking, and where similarly minded folks to me are. And the way that you counter that is to actually pick somebody who's further to the left than me, so that there's even less of a debate over, which side are they going to go with or whatnot in the court. I mean, if I could have it my way, I'd like to see him also pick an atheist, but that's probably not going to happen. But I don't have an issue. I'll say this: I don't have an issue with him explicitly stating, Joe Biden explicitly stating that he's nominating somebody and specifically mentioning the characteristics that he's looking for, because you could say Joe Biden goes to pick a set of nominees and he decides that he's going to pick a black woman to do it from a various array of people of different skin color, backgrounds, etc. Well, you could say, well, he arrived at the same thing. I think it was better for him to do it this way, because what he's doing is he's setting a message that there has historically been a lack of opportunity in Mexico, in the Supreme Court for women of color, and this is him trying to counter that out. So this is a W for Joe Biden, and I hope he moves very quickly with this, because he's not going to have forever. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw it over to
Venezuela.
Alex Stein.
What the fuck is...
I'm not just a crazy cat lady. I'm also a crazy dog lady. So I want that to be known.
What the hell is
yes, the Supreme Court justice. This is the problem with intersectionality. If we pick somebody based on just the color of their skin, it's not based on merit. So somebody theoretically could be more qualified that gets passed over. So I think that's bad. But really, at the end of the day, left, right. Amy Coney Barrett's. I mean, she acts like she's so conservative. She votes a lot to the left. So really, it's like. And these politicians, what they do is they urinate on us and they tell us it's raining. It doesn't matter who's in power. They all do the same thing.
Thank you very much.
The fuck is Lombardy?
That's what that was. So we're gonna throw it over to Adam.
Southern Italy. This is public.
Right. So well, this is a very much American issue, and as a European, I don't have that much insight into it. Well, that just to inject some. Maybe unrelated nuance to the situation, like from a European perspective, American progressive candidates, like left candidates, right candidates, from Europe, it's all right wing essentially. The US is much more to the right than Europe in general. Bernie Sanders' wildest fever dreams are a Monday in most European countries. And so if Biden picks some, like, I don't know, African-American woman to be the Supreme Court justice, then
whatever it gets us more closer
I can see
to
the discussion going into
Italy.
affirmative action from this. But, I mean, hey, it's Americans. I'm sure Biden will pick the candidate, and then burgers will be had, and a WWE match, and that's going to be an end of it. That's my very valuable insight to the situation.
It's kind of racist. My mom was a professional wrestler, so that's rude. My mom.
Mine is as well.
And she's a prostitute. So are you against prostitutes?
Well, mine isn't.
Okay, so let's continue. I'm gonna throw it now over to Destiny.
Turn the Spanish lands. I bet you $20,000. That means this is gone.
I could see it going either way. I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing in the world to preemptively announce, I guess, like the makeup of a judge, because I think you could potentially argue that part of the function of the Supreme Court is to represent maybe the United States, so having an all-white, all-male, or all-black, all-female, or whatever type of court might not be as representative of our country as we would want an important branch of government to be. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, just hopefully the pick is a good pick that could stand on their own merits, and it isn't somebody that seems uniquely unqualified for the job.
Bilbao is its own little baby.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Pixel.
I think it's interesting when we're talking about diversity hires, when basically Trump's idea of a diversity hire was Amy Coney Barrett, who is definitely not on the goddamn left, by the way, just to clarify. But I think it's not a bad thing that the Supreme Court becomes more representative of the American population in general. I think there are a lot of, in my expertise as an Australian, I think there are a lot of holes in the way that the Supreme Court functions now, and I think that any person who could be nominated, who could potentially stand up against probably the upcoming discussion about Roe v. Wade again, would be a really good thing for women. So, yeah, I think hopefully it's somebody more to the left. But I think it's going to depend on who Biden thinks he can sell to the majority of people voting in the Senate, or approving in the Senate, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think everybody's spoken. Okay, then we're going to start. Watson, did you not speak?
I spoke. I have something to say though. I spoke, but yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you can start it off then.
Yeah. So, this argument that Destiny put out, and what has really been put out for a long while, recently wrote about it, that the Supreme Court should look more like America, is an argument that really confuses me for a few reasons. Number one, what it means to look like America is quite unquantifiable. You can look at general geographic trends and statistics and say, okay, America is going this way, therefore you would look more like America if you did this. Problem is, there are a lot of states in America. And there are a lot of states in America that may not necessarily reflect the general geographic trends, because general geographic trends are indeed general. So how do you really quantify that? You can't. And really, what epistemic value do you give an institution? Because really, the Supreme Court, Congress, businesses, any institution that people want to look like America, they're concerned with epistemic value, which basically means they're concerned with having knowledge that can allow them to function properly. The Supreme Court is concerned with having knowledgeable people on their justice board that will allow them to function according to their proper functions. There is no epistemic value to having people on the Supreme Court for the sake of diversity. Now, I will say this, but Trump and Reagan both vowed to nominate women. And guess what? As someone himself who is conservative and someone who has decent amounts of admiration for Reagan, much less for Trump, I think that was a wrong decision. Not because they nominated a woman, but because they vowed explicitly to nominate a woman instead of nominating the best qualified candidate. So whether it comes from the left or the right, identity politics is always an epistemic pit that gives us nothing to our institutions, which does not allow us to adhere to first principles, and certainly does not add anything of merit to the functions of institutions either.
Oh no, man. I just.
I mean, frankly, when it comes to the Supreme Court, as long as they're qualified, it's fine. It's only going to be an issue if, like, you're unable to find qualified Supreme Court justices who Supreme Court picks that aren't Black women. But there are great candidates who are Black women. So I don't think there's necessarily a big problem in this scenario. My only concern would be that, like, if you're setting a model or a precedent about what is acceptable behavior, and there are other environments, most other environments, I would say, where hiring someone purely based on the color of their skin or vowing to do that is not appropriate. And it's really it's a special environment where you're hiring only one person, and where there has been precedent previously for making sure the Supreme Court, has some diversity.
Well, look, I think that, it's totally fine. I'm not saying that it's not okay to have a Black woman on the Supreme Court. What I'm saying, it is wrong to have that as the prefix to looking at a qualified candidate. Because again, you are whittling down the pool, and you are kind of reducing, maybe not totally, but you are kind of reducing that individual to their identity features, which is what Biden precisely is doing. And here's the idea. The underlying idea is this. The underlying idea is that because Black women have supposedly not been represented in many industries in America, we have to take the equitable decision and incorporate them and their presence into more institutions to remedy that injustice. Well, the problem with that is you don't actually do that.
Okay, Russia, I think you're fucked, buddy.
Not all Black women are impacted by one thing. There are a lot of Black women who are not lawyers and who will never be on the Supreme Court. So how in the world are you helping them by putting a Black lady on the Supreme Court? You're not. We should stop speaking in abstractions and look at qualifications and stop
at any moment I can declare war on Germany
as a criteria by which to order our institutions. Because the moment we do that is the moment our first principles erupt and our institutions fall down and they die.
I think that it's important when we look at I think that when we look at the composition of the Supreme Court, I think from a first principles point of view, I think it can be important that the members of the Supreme Court seem relatively representative in general of the United States population. I think that if we wanted to attack, sure, because the United States population in part draws its rule of law or how laws are interpreted, the Constitution directly, from the Supreme Court. And I think that if you have a country that's getting their most important legal document interpreted by a bench that doesn't look anything like them or isn't anything like them, I think that reasonably large swaths of Americans can feel like, I don't really feel like this whole body of government doesn't represent me very well, right? If you're a woman and there's 9 men are about to make a decision on whether or not Roe v. Wade stays as law, I think that you can rightfully feel like my government doesn't represent me, and when we're living in a representative democracy, I think it's fair to point to that as an important epistemic value of the court, that where people derive their truth could come from their subjective experience, which if you read any court briefs or how people, especially Scalia, would write, you know that the decisions that these justices make are oftentimes very personal. They're not these arbiters of truth, these logic lords or whatever. Like, they very much draw on personal experiences to make some of these decisions.
Well, after the Warren Court has certainly done a lot of damage to the integrity of the Supreme Court, and even before the Warren Court, there are a lot of problems with the Supreme Court as well. So I'm not going to pretend that the Supreme Court justices are arbiters of truth or arbiters of moral principles, although they should be. And if you look at Marbury versus Madison, instead of citing a bunch of case law, because there really wasn't any, at least not in America, because it was the first Supreme Court case of judicial review, there was a lot of philosophy cited. So maybe the court should get back to philosophy instead of acting, as this sort of a body of subjective opinions. But another thing you mentioned something called standpoint epistemology. And standpoint epistemology is this idea that what is true to me because I experienced it or I have experiences with it. So there are certain truths that I as a black man can't access that a black woman or an Asian woman can access. That's standpoint epistemology. The idea with this is that knowledge is not based solely on our experiences. Knowledge is as Kant said, and he eventually went on to argue against empiricism, but he said that all knowledge arises from experience. All knowledge begins from experience, not all knowledge arises from experience. And that's the correct, and then Locke took that idea and he made sort of his empirical model of the world. There is a world that exists outside of our experience that we can observe and we can extract natural truths from. So because I am a black man does not necessarily mean I have experienced a certain amount of things that a white man hasn't. There are white people who have experienced things that I have not experienced. I never lived in a trailer park before. I never lived in Appalachia before. I never been dirt poor in a trailer before. But there are plenty of white folks who have experienced that. So I don't understand. What do you mean? How do you represent a black person? What does that mean? How do you do it?
I don't think this is necessarily related to standpoint epistemology. I think that it's a more general explanation. We're not doing
blow the fuck up.
Generally
it's not about CRT. It's not about CRT at all.
I think that generally it's fair to say that a person's subjective experience can color, if you will, how they might view the world. I think it's fair to say that women probably have unique experiences in the United States or in the world that are different from men, that black people or Asian people or Hispanic people or different types of black people, different types of people probably have experiences in the United States that might be slightly different than other groups of people. And having that sort of representation on the court, much like we like our jury to be representative of the communities we live in, probably has some value to it, at the very least, so that a democratic people feel like they're being ruled by people like them.
Well, this becomes a majoritarian problem then. Because if you have like 9 Phyllis Schlafly, and for those of you who don't know, Phyllis Schlafly was a very uber-conservative activist who fought against the Equal Rights Amendment back in the, I think, 70s or 80s. You have 9 Phyllis Schlaflys on the Supreme Court. It's a woman, but a lot of women probably wouldn't like that because Phyllis Schlafly didn't think that she thought that women should be barefoot, pregnant, and they should be in the household. But she's a woman, so this is the point. Your identity does not necessarily give you a particular set point of view, and this is the idea of identity.
Okay, hold on, wait. You're engaging in horrendous fallacious argument right now. Hold on. You understand that because I'm not saying that. Would you acknowledge, or do you live in a fantasy land that different identities in general have different experiences in the United States?
Identities don't have experiences, people have experiences. So I reject the premise outright in the beginning.
Okay, so you don't believe that any large analysis of a people is possible. You can only look at individual units.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay,
no.
So then let me back up again. Hold on, because you're either being... Hold on, wait, stop. You're either in super debate mode or you're being ultra debate.
Wait, Destiny, you asked him a question. You gotta let him...
Yes, for another 35 seconds into random shit. Yeah.
You ask questions, then you move away. Let me answer. So general qualitative, analysis that people sociologists do, they have a place. Although I'm very critical of qualitative analysis typically because they don't necessarily rely too much on what is.
I can't. The ramblings drive me fucking crazy. Holy shit.
Necessary, but I think quantitative, if we're going to be making any sort of general predictions, I can't talk today, then we should probably look at quantitative analysis. But qualitative analysis absolutely does have a place. Sure, why not?
Do you think there are patriarchal influences that exist? Oh, sorry.
I gotta let Destiny respond to that.
Okay, sorry, hold on. I'm gonna, since I see the strategy now, I'll just ramble one. I'm just gonna ramble one time and then you can do your thing, right? So the strategy is to constantly duck and evade the obvious point and answer in the most obtuse way possible. So it seems like yes. So it seems like you have a reasonable point.
Nope.
The strategy is he's interrupting me. He's interrupting. I'm being interrupted. I'm being interrupted.
His answer.
Okay, so the obvious answer to anybody with 2 eyes that looks around them in the world is that different groups of people tend to have different types of experiences. That's why that if you as a black man are charged with murder or charged with raping a white woman and then you go to jail and your juror are 9 white women and you're from Alabama, you might think, hey, this feels a little bit fucked up. 99% of people in that situation wouldn't go, these 9 women, it is possible that all of them are marching with BLM and now they've come to sit on my court. Obviously, we can speak in broad generalities about how different groups of people have different experiences in the United States. This is why, broadly speaking, people around the world like to be represented by people like them. Whether we're talking about football and we like to see different countries represented in the World Cup, whether we're talking about a jury of our peers that we want to look like us, whether we're talking about the makeup of Congress, whether we're talking about the community police that police us. In general, people like to feel like they're being represented in a representative democracy. So I think it's fair to say that the composition of a court probably should be roughly similar, or attempt at least to match the composition of the people, holding all things equal. We still want them to be qualified candidates and everything, of course. I think that if there was one attack you wanted to make on the Supreme Court, one horrible thing that we've done to the Supreme Court, that I think is by far the most damaging thing we've done to the Supreme Court, is when we start to pick Supreme Court justices that lean left or lean right. I think that that is the most damaging thing we've ever done. Way before we get into identity politics or anything else, I think that is the most damaging thing we've done to the court, when we've tried to balance it with liberals and conservatives. That is ridiculous to me.
Okay,
well,
I got
there's
like 6 people on the list to talk, and don't worry, you're about to talk again because Pixel was going to ask you a question.
Yeah, I was just curious if you think that there are patriarchal influences that filter down through the American democratic system right now, and if any sort of like pushback towards that for representation for women was a particularly important thing to you.
Well, define patriarchal. What do you mean? Like in what?
As in, like, okay, basically that your entire country has been run by men for.
Why? Okay, look. Here's my deal. Yes, obviously there have been instances throughout American history where women have not been given a fair shake. I'm not going to deny that. That's very obvious. That's why we had people like Susan B. Anthony who fought for women's suffrage. Although I think that any kind of suffrage, this is where my sort of libertarian leanings come in. Any kind of quote-unquote suffrage is nonsensical and immoral, because you cannot create virtuous outcomes by force, and what the government really is force. Well, that's a different situation. But no, they're absolutely, well, you can think it's cringe all you want, but that's not an argument. So there are actually instances throughout American history where absolutely women have been given a fair shake. But I think the fair shake is more.
Oh God, everyone's just getting XP.
Actually correct. There was a sort of dominance of men, especially back in the 50s and 60s, even really before the sexual revolution.
Because every nation, every ally I have is just giving me air XP right now. Every single one.
Or not. I think any ideology that tries to restrict the agency of
someone
because
Royal
of what they
Atlantic
look like is bad.
Yeah.
And yes, there have been patriarchal
every
America that has done
single
that.
nation.
But do I think the fact that the
like
institutions throughout America have been historically run by men?
Every Entente member is currently getting an air thing, and then we're all asking like do stuff. Naval missions,
but patriarchy is more than simply a man being in control. So that's the problem with these sort of third-wave feminist ideas, because they're not really feminists; they're misandrists. They actually hate men, and they want to do everything they can to bring the idea of men down.
He's like, I could tell. I know this guy's background. I could feel it out more and more when he got into that standpoint epistemology. I think that's a really common attack against like CRT. So I think he's probably been down these roads or this like bringing up like invoking the concept of third wave feminism. Like it feels like this guy has like spent his time like cutting his teeth in certain debate spheres of the internet, but there's not enough time to like really dig into a lot of these things. Yeah.
Created by America, we should be pushing for more equal representation, because
I don't believe in democracy.
Oh wow, dig it, Chad.
Oh wow,
America is not democracy. I don't believe in democracy. I don't believe in democracy.
Based.
Yeah, libertarian doesn't believe in democracy. Who would have figured?
No, I don't.
Wait, are you a libertarian? Yes. With the bears?
What do you believe in
the
then?
Libertarian with the bears? Was it New Hampshire? Was it the bear colony? Was it the bears?
What?
Wasn't there a libertarian colony in America somewhere? But it didn't last very long because the bears came in and ate.
Well, I mean, okay, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of
libertarianism is not a serious ideology. So.
Of course it is. Of course,
libertarianism.
So why are you so passionate about the idea of the Supreme Court if you're a libertarian? Like, why is your opinion so strong on this?
Because I have to deal with practical circumstances, and a lot of folks think that libertarians are not deal with practical stuff. We do. I have to deal with practical circumstances. At least I do, as someone who is interested in philosophy and who actually wants to help the American experiment get better and better and better. I have to deal with practical circumstances, and in my opinion, trying to distort the image of the Supreme Court by injecting equity and diversity and inclusion
blow
into
the
Supreme
fuck out of
Court
these fucking people. Whoever the fuck is near the
Hawaiian
Islands.
Obligation
Gotta go
to
say
stand
hello.
up for the
Hey! I'm a big, huge boat!
In the form of that kind of resistance. Righteous
so your version of America is rooted in not the 1950s, but probably at the 1850s at this level, because
Jesus.
what opposition, what moral opposition would you have had? Like again, we saw this in the previous segment where you couldn't tell that that moral action was needed to be taken against Russia. What moral argument would you have against the abolition of slavery then? Because the logical conclusion of what you're arguing, and I've got a question for you as well, but the logical conclusion
Supreme Court justice
of what you're arguing, the logical logical conclusion of what you're arguing. The logical conclusion of what you're arguing.
Wait, Alex.
Cringe.
Wait,
How about cringe?
Alex.
You like to go cringe.
Alex.
That's
okay,
cringe.
wait. No. Please, wait, everybody, please let Kevin finish asking the black person why he'd be against slavery. Continue.
Yeah, no, I'm just, it's a simple question. It's a simple a question that I have basically, which is that you've said that you're against democracy. You've said that suffrage would be forcing people to have rights. And you've also said that you're opposed to injecting equity and whatnot into the Supreme Court. The world that you're laying out is a very reactionary vision of America that's not shared by most Americans and not in the direction that America is moving. And I think that the founding fathers of America ultimately envisioned a self-perfecting system that they knew that they were flawed from the outset. And it seems like you want to keep a lot of these flaws and maintain their sort of institutionalization. My question for you, Christian, is very simple, which is that you said in your intro, you said that that you felt that what does this do for everybody who's black or everybody who's a woman, because you said that that not everybody who meets those characteristics is in the judiciary, but you acknowledged, it was almost implicit in your acknowledgement there, that this would be helpful or could be seen as helpful if you are black and a woman and you're in law. So I guess my question is, your logic seems to be, because we can only kind of solve one thing a little bit here that only affects a few people, and we can't do everything at the same time at once, therefore do nothing. My question to you is, do you actually genuinely want to help people that are historically disadvantaged, or is it almost concern trolling, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh my Jesus. So what you're doing there is, first of all, you equivocated. So there is absolutely no similarity between the abolition of slavery, which was a righteous cause founded on the principle of natural law, and the idea of having a black woman in the Supreme Court or in the corporate boardroom. There is absolutely no relationship to me that seems to be very clear between those two. Putting people in bondage against their rights is a violation of their natural rights, and that's something that obviously every moral person should respond to. Putting a black woman in an institution to say that you are now representing people, when in all reality there is no one person of any group that represents anyone of that group, that is not the same thing, and that is an absurdity. And that is my point. I want to help people who have been quote-unquote historically disadvantaged by allowing us to have a meritocratic, colorblind system that does not take into account their identity or their race, but takes into account what they can do. The problem is, and this is what W.E.B. Du Bois said in This All Black Folk, the problem has never been that black folks have been unqualified. W.E.B. Du Bois said that the black race will be saved by its best, he said the Negro race will be saved by its best men. The problem is their merits have not been historically, in a lot of places historically, not been acknowledged by the broader system, or they have been forcibly suppressed by the broader system. So what do? You change that, not by trying to do a sort of reverse type of thing where you look at their skin color and above their merits and then put them in positions, but you change that by looking blindly at their merits. And you do that by embracing a colorblind system that does not embrace diversity, equity, or inclusion. You are presuming that DEI, or having this sort of equitable mindset, is the only way to correct historical injustice, and that is absolutely not correct. So I think that your argument is just absolutely. Well, then, your argument acts. Your argument. One second. No. Your argument acts if this is the only way, because you have been saying, well, you don't want to do this or that, so you must not want to help people. No, I don't want to buy into the system. I don't want to buy into the false paradigm that says these are the ways we have to address these issues. There are ways that are not particularly orthodox that we can use to address these issues that embrace a spirit of radical individualism that are founded upon the American system.
So you'd have to actually lay out an alternative way then, as opposed to just going into abstracts.
I just did.
Because you said earlier, well, no, you haven't. You said earlier that you oppose suffrage and that you thought that suffrage was wrong, but yet you're trying to claim now that the abolition of slavery was justified, but in both of those cases you're using force to emancipate people, though. So on what grounds? Because it kind of sounds like you're an advocate of the literal patriarchy at this point, is what it sounds like.
No. So again, you're drawing together.
One second though, Chris,
you're false equivocating. You're equivocating.
On the list, Christian's talked for like 40% of this topic.
Sure.
You have a false.
My apologies.
So
again, you're drawing together a bunch of things that are not necessarily related. Me being opposed to equity does not mean I'm in favor of the patriarchy. There's no relation between the two. And me being opposed to the idea. Me being opposed to suffrage does also not mean I'm in favor of the patriarchy either, by the way, because the suffrage has been used, quote unquote, by the patriarchy to advance their causes too. So it's a sort of all-purpose tool, isn't it? So the idea of suffrage, I'm against it. And one of my favorite philosophers, Lysander Spooner, wrote an essay about this. And what she basically says, there's nothing wrong with women, and they have natural rights, but there's something wrong with thinking you can affect moral change through an inherently immoral system, and that immoral system is voting. And voting is immoral because it utilizes force many times illegitimately. Now, this is where I don't agree with Spooner's argument. He would have the entire government.
Are you an anarchist?
No. I'm trying to qualify. You'd have the entire government.
Okay, real quick. Something this superpower broadcaster guy keeps doing that's kind of annoying is people keep trying to identify like, oh, so you're a libertarian. Oh, so you're an anarchist. Oh, like, who cares? Just deal with what the arguments he's saying. What he's saying on its own are like pretty ridiculous. You don't have to keep trying to figure out like what he is. Like, don't worry about that. Who cares?
There is in further entrenched government involvement. So that's why I'm against this idea of suffrage. And as a right person, and I'm not against the idea of voting in principle.
Well,
I think that it's a privilege. I think that it's important to a republic to be able to vote. But it's not necessarily a sacred right that allows us to be virtuous, to make good moral decisions, or be good citizens. Not necessarily. So that's my opinion. I don't want to talk for too long, but it's a very nuanced idea I have. And no, I'm not in support of the patriarchy because I don't think that voting's a right.
I think that if you had a system where all the Supreme Court justices, 100% of them, were from San Francisco, that would be a problem. And it's not because everyone from San Francisco necessarily has the same opinions, same experiences, and so on. But we can agree that there's a broader trend, right? And the people in San Francisco are going to tend to have
they need
a
range
kind of
upgrades
experience
for sure.
that is not necessarily shared across the rest of the country. So when we're talking about government systems, I don't think it's crazy to try to appoint Supreme Court justices that are representative of a diversity of opinions and experiences, right? This is like one of the situations where it absolutely does make sense to look for a diversity of experiences, right? And like, I'm listening to you, Christian, and I agree about these like policies that are putting skin color first and are making people feel like diversity hires.
The invasion of Hawaii.
In that position, and it sucks to feel that way, right? And it's not fun, and I don't think it's good generally. But I think maybe we can come to some common ground. And I think the San Francisco example is a good example. Because I think if the Supreme Court was 100% people from New York, you probably also wouldn't like that. And you'd probably also want some diversity of viewpoint and experience in that environment.
Well, the problem with the diversity, the problem with the diversity higher line, though, let's just be clear about it, is it automatically assumes that. Oh, okay.
Is it my turn?
I said yes, Adam. It is your turn.
Okay, thank you, in here. Right. So, with regards to the point whether institutions should represent the people as the Biden administration is trying to do, the answer is yes. And I can even give you European examples from my good old home country, Hungary. Back in Central Europe, there's a sort of national pastime called majoritarianism, meaning that the dominant group, the dominant ethnic group, culturally and population-wise, they get to rule everything and no one else gets represented. Now, this actually led to essentially the quick dissolution of Hungary in the end after the Trianon treaties, losing 2/3 of its territories, not only because everything was in Hungary, and Hungarians were in charge. They were 48% of the total population, and the rest basically could just go fuck themselves. So there's
about the Austro-Hungarian
a very good case
Empire?
to be made for making institutions representative of the people. It contributes to essentially national stability. Also, there are points made about like meritocracy and basically just let the essentially the free market, the big meme, let the free market decide, or like this is not. I know this is not really the point. But like the idea of meritocracy, I just wanted to clarify that. Our current system has its own, our current system, by that I mean talking about the US. So the US system has its own baggage at this point. So certain people, through historic injustices, have collected or lost wealth. There's now a wealth hierarchy. I think, what was it? Like for every every $100 a white family owns, there's like $2.50 for like a black family or something. So there's very clear very
Where are my boats?
Differences between different people, men and women. There's also like there's the pay gap, etc. If you go like these, for you to advocate for a meritocracy, first you need to equalize these things, and then we're getting into the weeds of like, okay, implicit bias, etc., which might again skew the results. My point is, currently the idea of meritocracy in the US is a myth. It cannot function by definition, because in a meritocracy, if everyone just gets the same amount of starting, I guess, political power or capital or whatever, with the US's current baggage, socioeconomic baggage, they'll just end up reinforcing existing hierarchies in a pretty short term, basically. Yeah. So that's for now. I'm done. So I'll join in later in the discussion.
Okay.
Where the fuck are all my planes?
I think that's everybody on the list. Oh, Kevin, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to clarify something very quickly, just about the diversity hire thing. I think that the diversity hire line it's
okay. I don't know where the fuck my boats are, but
kind of unfortunate here, because what Biden's saying is that he's going to be picking somebody who meets the characteristics of being black and female, but he's not saying that he's doing that and thereby saying, well, other people are better, or like the assumption in saying that somebody's a diversity hire automatically means that you think, well, they only got this job because of their skin color or whatever. It's very possible that if you were to have, say, 100 different candidates selected, no criteria enforced, that you wind up with a black woman to be on the Supreme Court. What he's doing here isn't saying, well, there's no way that they could get this without me explicitly stating it. He's not doing that. What he's doing here is a symbol, rather, of an acknowledgement of historical disadvantage, which everybody here seems to acknowledge was the case. And he's saying we're attempting to rectify that. So when people say, oh, they're just a diversity hire, it ultimately, it assumes that the only reason why they got this job is that they would have lost out if they were in an open pool. It's very well that a black woman could have won in an open pool. What he's doing here is sending a message, though, and I support it. And I also will say, just to clarify here, the reason why he needs to pick somebody as well that's to the left of me is that the Republicans have had 3 people that are considerably to the right of where I'm at. And so me looking at this, why wouldn't the Democrats also follow suit in that? I know Destiny said that that the problem with the U.S. Supreme Court was that it got politicized. But Destiny, you'd still say that the Democrats would be right to pick somebody as a liberal. Would you say that if Biden picked somebody?
You have to play the game they're playing, right. Of course, unfortunately,
Yeah, like it's a problem that it started out that way, but now that that's the rule of the game, Biden would be a fool not to counter that, right? So those are just my thoughts on this situation. Obviously, I got a lot of criticisms of Joe Biden and everything, but it seems kind of goofy to be particularly upset that Biden decided that he's going to pick somebody who's a black female. Like what? What's he gonna do? Come out and say, I'm gonna pick a white male? Like that'd be weird, you know?
By doing that, he's excluding gay people, he's excluding trans people, he's excluding a lot of other people that
the woman could be
marginalized as well. I'm just saying there's other marginalized people that he's excluding that could be represented. So by him saying a black person, black women are very marginalized
he never
in society.
Excluded bisexuals.
They're not the most marginalized people, though. I'm just saying there's other people. So what? But why not a Hispanic? Why not a Filipino? There's America's a melting pot. I'm saying why does it have to be a black woman? Do you see what I'm saying? I think that's the problem.
I think for the first time in this debate, Conspiracy Castle's making some sense. He's correct.
From the left, you guys just don't want to believe it, but that's fine.
From the left, there is this sort of intersectional hierarchy that says that the more intersectional, the more your identity is intersectional oppression.
Intersectional hierarchy, I feel like this guy feels like he does a lot of CRT debates on TikTok. It feels like he's got a whole vocab ready to break out for. Now I know this isn't a CRT debate, but holy shit, that's what it feels like all this is coming from.
If you're black, if you're a woman, if you're obese, and if you're trans, you're trans woman rather, you have more identities. If you're disabled, more. So again, there could be a critique from the left saying, why isn't Biden including more identities in that? And I'm certain there are critiques from the left about that too. But the general
no one is seriously making that criticism though.
Perhaps not, but it's one that can be. It's one, if you believe in intersectionality, absolutely can be.
But the problem is,
speaking at once. Christian, you can finish your point, and then we gotta wrap up. Okay.
Okay. Here's my general point about this. Okay. So I have no problem with a black woman being on the Supreme Court. There are plenty of black women who are conservative jurists, or who have not even always even voted with the conservative side. Barack Obama, I forgot, she's a woman in Arizona, I forgot what her name was, but Barack Obama, when he was a senator, accused her of being a judicial activist. Barack Obama accusing someone of being a judicial activist, and he goes on and appoints some of the biggest activists in the court's history, which is interesting. So, but there are plenty of qualified women, black women that Biden could absolutely pick who are not for conservative. But the problem is, it's not just about them being a black woman, it's about them being a black woman who's also progressive. And in my opinion, you should not have the identity qualifier at the forefront of a consideration that is going to impact an institution which is crucial to preserving and adjudicating the Constitution, which is the document upon which the American political project rests. That's what I'm saying. Identity has no relation to that whatsoever. I don't care if people think that if someone is black and they're black, they have a relationship with them, this sort of metaphysical relationship. It's nonsense. I don't have a metaphysical relationship with someone just because they're black. If I don't know them, if I have nothing in common with them, regardless of our skin color, I have nothing in common with them. I consort with people. But no, the argument is that people want to feel represented, and having someone who's black might make black folks feel more represented. That's nonsense, though, because I'm not necessarily represented just because someone is black. If I have nothing in common with them, I don't share values with them, that does not mean I'll be represented. I mean, if Louis Farrakhan became a big political figure, he's black, but I don't agree with anything the man says. So,
literally, no one is arguing that. Nobody's arguing that.
No.
Yeah, but nobody's arguing that.
People are arguing that people want to be more represented.
Be more represented doesn't necessarily 100% mean. It's not a 100% like, oh, that guy's black, I'm black, we have all the same interests. We have probabilities.
Okay, so
yeah, you're still one person, Christian.
You guys are like that America should have people of different experiences and different beliefs. I agree, but you seem to be aligning that with skin color or some kind of other identity.
Yeah, because that's where the lines fall. I don't know how else to explain.
Or whatever.
Because skin color is one identity that you can live a life through.
But you're also not acknowledging that there has been an underlying.
Okay. There's a bunch of people piling on at the same time. Pixel, finish. Okay, 1 second. Pixel, could you finish your question? Then Watson will have like 20 seconds to respond. We gotta wrap up.
It seems like you're ignoring the fact that there has always been an underlying identity qualifier for the Supreme Court in the first place, which was that you were a white man at the start, right? And that kind of idea has filtered down through the system. So, the idea of identity qualifiers has always been there, except now it's a little bit different, and it's trying to be more representative of a population in general.
And as I mentioned, instead of embracing the reverse of the original wretched idea of using identity as a qualifier for someone, you ought to reject it outright and embrace colorblindness full stop. That's all I'll say about this.
You ever think there's a scenario where someone's...
Taft.
Okay.
It's over.
We'll move on.
No!
It's kind of funny that 9 white people are telling a black guy about cultural representation.
Okay.
Ironic, huh? Yeah.
Okay.
So
now we're gonna
Can you do me too?
Yes, gladly. And I'll deafen.
Thank God. Huh. I thought a boat of mine just got sunk as it was going across.
Oh my God. Is the Christian guy actually a TikToker? Do you guys know? He feels like it. Not to hate on my fellow TikToker.
Is any scenario in which there is some legitimacy in trying to hire a diversity of opinions and appoint them.
These I don't know what they did. These boats are so fucking annoying.
Legitimate criticism.
Go to where you're supposed to go.
Engaging in diversity hiring, and I think that those are much more true elsewhere. I've personally experienced this, and it sucks, but it makes sense to me in this scenario. And obviously, there's a political game being played here, and the Democrats are going to try to get in a liberal Supreme Court justice, and that's just the way it goes, the way the politics are right now. That's
okay. I'm gonna throw it over to Kevin Castley.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So I'll just start by saying, I don't think he will, but I hope that Biden doesn't replicate Obama's sort of hesitation with nominating a Supreme Court justice and fall for any sort of Republican delusions of bipartisanship here. Everybody knows that the Supreme Court has become a political institution at this point, and all that you can do if you're a Democratic president in that context is to, appoint somebody who's very Democrat, very left within the American context, and rush them through. I really do hope that he rushes them through. I think that a balance is important, especially given that you've got 3 new conservative justices. I think that that's important. That's why I say I hope he goes for somebody who's to the left of where I am to counter that out. I'll say this as well. I like the ideal of color blindness. I'm not like a big fan of CRT or anything. I've argued against that kind of stuff in the past, but the thing is there's a little bit of a nuance with my position on this, which is that, well, we're not there yet. We're not there yet in America, and we're not there yet in Canada. In Canada, we've had injustices against Indigenous people, for example. That's happening in the United States too, and there's been injustices against Black women in general in the United States, specifically in the judiciary. And I think that the goal that you want to get to down the road is where you can have a fair colorblind system. But in order to get there, you have to rectify previous imbalances, and I think that this is a step in that direction. I do think, though, that once that sort of equity is reached, that you can actually have a serious and genuine colorblind approach. So in that sense, I believe in that sort of liberal colorblind approach that a lot of people criticize, but the leftists on the panel so far have made a very good argument and a compelling argument, and in general in social media I've seen leftists make a better argument on this issue than conservatives right now, because the fact of the matter is America's not ready to have a genuine, fair, colorblind approach on this. You actually have to rectify for previous imbalances first to get there. To get outraged by this it's pretty cringy, honestly. And I think that Joe Biden's, I hope he hires somebody very good, very qualified for the position. And anybody who's going to dismiss them as, oh, they're a diversity hire or whatever. No, there's somebody very qualified who happen to also just meet the characteristics that were desired there. Thank you.
I'm going to throw it over to Pixel.
I agree with the Canadian centrist. I think most of those points were pretty solid. I also think that America is in a very difficult spot because politics has gotten to this place where it's such a team sport, including things like Supreme Court hires. They have become a team sport. I'm going to nominate somebody who represents my team rather than somebody who represents like my ideology specifically. I hope that Joe Biden nominates somebody even to the left of him. And I hope that he does exactly what Donald Trump did and pushes somebody through before midterms, because Roe v. Wade is. I worry about the government's position on Roe v. Wade for women in America. I think it's really concerning. So, yep.
I'm gonna throw it over to Parker.
So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to base like who we pick for the Supreme Court based upon allowing for more equitable representation. I think that's generally a decent thing to do. I also don't think that we can just like ignore the fact that who's determining who has the most merit and who's the best option for the Supreme Court or not in the legislative branch. We're talking about Senate or whatnot. We're talking about it's overwhelmingly men, it's overwhelmingly white. We know who is picking these type of people that are going to the Supreme Court, so we also have to take that into account when we are adopting people to the Supreme Court. I don't think it's necessarily the best thing to say like, oh, we should look for like a person of this specific characteristic, but I do think that we do have to take into account injustice of the past to allow for more representation amongst like our systems of power.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over now to Destiny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just echoing everything that's already been said. I think that representation among our political institutions is pretty important. When we are ruled democratically, we want to feel like those institutions represent us. If I had a panel of, like 9 Asian people deciding whether or not affirmative action should exist at a school, or 9, women deciding whether or not paternal rights should be protected for children or whatever, like, I think it's good in our systems in general to have some representation of the general population so that they feel like their institutions represent them when it comes time to ruling on how those institutions, or how they engage with those institutions.
Okay, I'm gonna now throw it over to Adam something.
Thank you. So, I mean, yes, I pretty much agree to what Destiny said. There is, by the way, a meritocratic case for affirmative action, because if you take a black and white person who have similar achievements, but the black person is like a bit lower, of course, but the black person comes from a very impoverished background, because historically, of course, black people have been more impoverished in the US, and that stands to reason that the black person worked much harder to get to that level below somewhere below the white person. And so at that point, the person who worked the hardest should get the position. So there's that, but I'm not looking to open an argument on that. I just wanted to put it out there. As for the meritocratic argument, of course, as people said, meritocracy at this point cannot work yet. It's a nice future prospect, but it's the same way as like it's as if you instituted like limitless free market in the US tomorrow by just like removing the government. Yeah, that's cool, but then 2 days later you're going to be living in the Bezos empire because because of all his leverage and because of all the advantage he built up, which he will leverage, of course, in pursuit of power. So, yeah, that's my take.
He wouldn't have subsidies anymore.
The Christian, you're next.
I guess.
Anyway, yeah. So look, I think that it's quite obvious what the answer is here. If you're looking at this from a first principles foundational perspective on the American experiment, and you guys can laugh all you want, but the answer here is very simple. We pick someone who is concerned with executing the functions faithfully of the Supreme Court, and you pick someone who is concerned with doing that, and not someone on the basis of what they look like or what you presume their experience to be, because they're a black woman or whatever consortium of identities you've managed to concoct in your paradigm. The Supreme Court has a very particular duty. The United States has a very particular duty to its institutions, and we should have an eye on preserving those and not preserving our ideas of what they should look like when those ideas may not add anything that is epistemically beneficial to the institutions themselves.
And Alex.
Well, guys, it's been a lovely debate. I have to say, it was very spirited at times. And listen, we know that Joe Biden is the most popular president ever, 81 million votes. So we know that he is a great representation. And Joe Biden, we know that is one of the best presidents of all time, that we know that he is so capable and that he's running this country. He's doing an awesome job. So with the job that he's doing, because America is doing so great right now, I can't wait for the Supreme Court justice that he picks. As a matter of fact, like I said, I love the intersectionality aspect of it. I'm just mad that it's not representative enough of people that are marginalized. Like I said, I would like to see a trans person, somebody gender fluid. I would like to see more people that are marginalized represented. But we know that Joe is the smartest guy. His son, Hunter Biden, he even said is the smartest person he knows. I hope he asks Hunter. I hope he asks his son. I hope he calls Hunter on the phone. They smoke some crack together, and they figure out who this is going to be. Because let me tell you something. If Joe Biden is he's doing such a good job with America right now, I know whoever he picks is going to be the best thing for America.
Yeah, the main point is that they're not part of a certain ethnic group, right?
No, I hope they're black and gay and trans. No, I hope they're part of every group.
With the echoes and the deep state. Anyway.
We gotta keep going. Okay. For everybody at home, of course, donations, subs, and everything to keep the show going is appreciated. And I thank again everybody for coming on for the show. I know it's a long one, but we only have one topic left, and then we're finally wrapping up, so you can all.
Oh God, is there really another topic? Oh no.
My dog's just going crazy. Now I love it. I'm gonna put my dog out in the backyard. Hold on, I'm good. Okay. I'm good to go.
Also, somebody asked me. Yes, you can go use the bathroom. You do not need to ask me. You are allowed to use the bathroom. Oh, Destiny, you can go use the bathroom permanently if you want. I'd appreciate it.
Wait, can I really?
Yes.
Okay, I love you guys.
Don't leave, Destiny. We got it. Last round. We got to finish it. We finished what we started here.
Okay, so we're going to the last topic, and the last topic is a simple one. How do we unite the country? Now, this could also apply to countries that,
very simple.
Like for example, he's in Hungary. Adam is so.
Currently, I'm in Germany. So just to clarify.
Well, he's from Hungary, but he's in Germany. But this is something that can apply across the world, because divisions and across party lines and across peoples is an international phenomenon. But how do we unite the country through an American perspective or an Australian perspective or any perspective? How do we go about it? Or is it a lost cause? a very doomer question. I'm going to start with Taft in the bottom right-hand corner.
How do we unite the country? I mean, I think there's a serious problem with people polarizing and sectioning off into their own groups. And you see that on social media, especially. People develop echo chambers and reinforce negative opinions. I think that we need to try our best to reach out to people and have conversations and to connect with people, even if we think that if we disagree with them to an incredible degree. This tends to be more of a problem with progressives. They're more likely to ban or block someone based on political problems, political disagreements than conservatives, but it goes both ways. And the one thing that we need to be doing is just making sure people are talking to each other more.
Wonderful. Now we're going to throw it over to Kevin.
That's like the Hungarian flag.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So to kind of answer this question, there are a lot of factors here, but I think, we can look at some of the micro factors of the division between individuals and whatnot and what sort of solutions might exist there. And I actually think that to some extent, debate culture has helped with that to mitigate divisions.
Hungary
I think, imagine if panels like this didn't exist,
you're allowed
we'd
to take
actually be in a worse position. So I think that talking to the other side is important. Debates are important. And I think that, there is a problem with some people that don't really want to engage in debate. I've seen this. It used to traditionally be a problem more attributable to progressives and people to the left of that, but that's changed in recent years. Where what I've seen now is actually oftentimes it'll be people of like the Steven Crowder type, for example, that don't want to debate. They'll shy away from debating. That's always very cringy. Now at a broader level, more systemic level, I think that there is a role for government here to actually step in to provide a mechanism for the divisions.
The thing is, that's weird is that, like, I'm letting him take Russia,
but to have that be more organic, because
he's also letting me take,
and this is a fact, that the
Asia.
Divisions that exist in our societies,
we'll get Japan eventually, right?
America, Australia, the UK, have been exacerbated by foreign interference, particularly emanating from fascist Russia. We have the research agency, Internet Research Agency, based in St. Petersburg,
the world
that
is truly
has been co-opting numerous progressive, far left, and far right and alt-right groups and pitting them against each other because they know they can't defeat us on a battlefield, so they have to stoop to these levels. What I would suggest the government do is very simple. We ban Russia today. There's no more hostile media that's tolerated to propagandize our kids, basically, and sometimes even our grandparents get suckered into it. And there's no more media officials, media figures, social media figures getting paid by hostile entities and not registering that. I think registering foreign agents is important, and I think you should not be allowed to accept $1,000 donation from the Syrian dictator Jimmy Dore. So that's how I would go about that.
Pixel.
Muted.
I'm muted.
Resource gain efficiency could.
Oops. I'll explain from an Australian perspective. I think there's a lot of challenges when it comes to uniting a country, and I don't know if it will ever be fully achieved in any of our lifetimes. I think there are certain things that we can do to increase the robustness of democratic structures in our society. I also think that I agree with the previous two speakers that talking to people who disagree with you is really important to be able to navigate some of the more difficult issues. I think why it's such a problem in progressive spaces is because for so long, minorities who generally lend towards progressive ideology have really struggled and felt like they were fighting for their identity. And so what has happened is kind of a fragmentation of the left, which has resulted in kind of an in-group, out-group rhetoric that exists on the left. Like, if you're not my type of left, then you're not on my team. And so I think one of the best things we could possibly do is stop thinking about politics and political conversation as a team sport, rather just a large conversation But in order to be able to do that, there are some fundamental things that people need to agree on, whether that is like liberty or personal rights and things like that. So I don't know if it will happen in our lifetime. I think in America you have a particularly large set of challenges, mainly because of the leaking of religion into political discourse. But I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Parker.
I think that a way in which we could unite the country is by addressing bad arguments that exist instead of just banning them off platforms. I also think that talking about these issues and educating people on each other's opinions, because people have a huge misunderstanding of other people's ideologies, will allow us to understand other people a lot more. But one more thing I do want to ask is, what do we consider like a united country? Or like, what would a united country look like? Because I don't think we'd be anywhere near like what a united country would be like associated with.
Okay, now I'm gonna throw it over to Destiny.
I think the two most important things that need to happen is, one, we need to have some factual basis that we agree on. Without that, literally everything falls to pieces. And right now, we like have different groups of people that just have totally different realities that they live in the United States. So I think that's one of the most important things. Second thing, hopefully that kind of stems from a result of that, is we need to go back to being able to fight with each other rather than all of us kind of existing in our own areas. It's getting scary how far the right and the left are kind of like spreading apart because there doesn't seem to be much conversation anymore. I think the polarization has gotten really extreme, such that everybody on the left sees everybody on the right as a fascist, everybody on the right sees everybody on the left as some weird SJW woke police, and there's like no more conversation in the middle that kind of keeps both sides grounded into themselves. And
Daddy just copied my take. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but I bet I said it better. Fuck you.
Maybe.
Okay, I throw it now over to Alex Stein. How do we unite the country, Alex? Are you that uniting figure?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this would be very easy to unite the country. I mean, first things first, if the Dallas Cowboys winning the Super Bowl, that would help. But listen, what we have to do is we have to do a reallocation of the military-industrial complex, and we'd have to give our people universal basic income, because that would make everybody happy. I'm not even that pro-universal basic income. I'm just not pro wasting all this money in the military-industrial complex. So I'm talking about what will actually unite the country and what will make people happy. I'm not saying this is the best thing. And then once you do that, you'll give enough people, everybody can buy their PlayStation 5, and then they can plug into the metaverse. And that's what's going to happen, is they're going to make our world so terrible on the outside that we're going to run to the metaverse. And in the metaverse, we can be 10 feet tall, we can have a 10-inch dick, we can be transsexual, we can be a badass. So the way we unite the country is we got to give enough people enough money to buy technology in order to plug into Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, and then that way we wouldn't have time to fight, because a digital fight, nobody gets hurt. It's like Dungeons and Dragons or something. So that's the only way we unite the country, is we take the fight off the street and we bring it to the metaverse. And in there, with the universal basic income, we live like kings when we plug into our pod. I can't wait for it.
What do you think of the 49ers, Alex?
I think, though, listen, this is the conspiracy side. I actually played high school football with Matt Stafford. He's my quarterback. I was captain of the team. But listen, I believe that this is the conspiracy. This is the conspiracy. That's true. You can look it up. Highland Park football captain, Alex Stein, 99. But this is the conspiracy, what they're going to say San Francisco is going to win. Pittsburgh has 6 Super Bowls. New England Patriots have 6 Super Bowls. And now San Francisco is going to get their 6th Super Bowl, 666. So if they win, it got called here tonight. You heard it here first.
Okay. Throwing it over to Christian.
Yeah, well, you know, I think a lot of people have hit on a good point here by saying conversation is important. But more than conversation, the foundational basis upon which we pursue conversation for is even more important. The philosopher Hugo Grotius, who many folks haven't heard of, but the American founders certainly knew who he was. And John Locke certainly knew who he was, because John Locke actually took a lot of influence from him. He said that man, along with being a social creature, which wasn't really unique or new to him, he said that along with being a social creature...
Okay, I hate this guy, but one thing this guy does really well is when he cites a philosopher, notice how he brings it up, he contextualizes it, then he states what they stated, and then he like makes it work for the conversation. At least he's very good at incorporating things that he's read into the conversation, and you can tell that he's engaged with it. I appreciate that. Unless he's just quoting a lot of shit that I don't know about, but like quoting somebody else's interpretation. But he does do a good job of that, at least. I'll give him credit for that.
For ourselves. Because in order to build something with other people, we have to love and respect ourselves. The problem is a problem of resentment, and in politics these days, politics is oftentimes a game of resentment. A lot of people hate. They hate, they hate, they hate. And they hate so much they forget how to love. So I do think, in a sense, that love of self, at least, is the basis for how we can continue, you know, even having a common basis. Because we can disagree on every single other thing. But if we can agree on, you know what, we love ourselves enough to work together in concert to achieve some common name, even if we don't know what it is, then that will be enough, I think, to save civilization. So conversation is important, but self-love is also important, and increasing that amount of self-love in the conversation is also equally important.
Wow. Destiny, do you love everyone on this panel?
Yeah.
I have no reason not to.
You love me the most, though, right, Destiny? Right?
I do like Conspiracy Council the most. So.
And that's the thing. We can we can viciously and angrily disagree with each other, but at the end of the day, walk away saying, hopefully saying, this is a good faith conversation. I hope to have more. That's self-love transposed into universal love of community.
Amazing. We're gonna throw it now over to Adam to wrap up the intros for the final topic.
Sure. So unity in America. Well,
the fuck was I doing?
As others have said, the problem is that these two sides have diverged too far from each other. However, I don't think this can be solved with self-love. You know, yeah, we can all like in this panel we're all cordial, we're all intellectual, we're all polite to each other. But what if I was some kind of groiper, and I said to Christian, hey Christian, as soon as we get into power, we're going to deport you back to Africa, and we don't give a shit. So, goodbye. So at that point, there can be, as you can see, there are certain limits beyond which there's just no cooperation, and just there's no real way of, coming together as a nation, right? I think America is pretty close to that point, actually, but this is
the fuck is my third?
Due to so many reasons, one of which is... American media.
America
doesn't have state media, mostly impartial state media, like the BBC, Czech television, established European broadcasters, which are, for the most part, try to be impartial. Instead, there is for-profit news organizations, and of course, CNN, MSNBC, etc. Those are some NPC, whatever, Virtue Signal, etc. for-profit kind of news organizations. But then there is Fox News, which is that plus with a cause, Rupert Murdoch is the owner, or is I believe the chairman currently. There's in America, I see a mostly on the right wing this very sometimes well organized essentially disinfo networks on par with RT. So we have the fucking breakdown over Minnie, I think, the Disney's Minnie Mouse having the suit thingy instead of the skirt. Now we have in America there's all these manufactured outrages, and sometimes these manufactured outrages actually go a bit beyond Minnie Mouse and stuff. Sometimes it's Tucker Carlson making thinly veiled white supremacist statements on air. So, and I don't see this slowing down. We've even gone so far in America as January 6th, for example. So I have no idea at this point how America.
I think Russia died.
Maybe with time, some people will grow out of it, and or one solution I can see is that conservatives, right-wing people in general, who vote Republican, etc., they will slowly fade into irrelevance, and then the Democratic Party will keep winning the elections, and then the real presidential election becomes the Democratic primary, and with that at least you have the sort of right-wing part of the country contained, and so the differences will become somewhat irrelevant.
Okay, now who wants to start off the open panel? Okay, Christian, once again.
Adam, something. I think that
let Taft.
The rhetoric around well, we just need to wait for Republicans and conservatives to fade into irrelevance or contain them in some way, and then everything will be okay. I think that that's the sort of thing that contributes to division and frustration between people. And I mean, you're right that the United States is not going to be united by any easy means, but I think that we have to start by accepting that there's going to be fundamental differences in opinions between people, and it's not enough to just wait for them to disappear or hope they do, but we have to actually go to the table and negotiate with them.
The problem is once you go to the table, one person says that, oh yeah, hey, by the way, it looked like a fair election by the one, and the other thing is like, you know, deep state Pizzagate, you know, the raping children in the basement. So at which point there's no real point to discuss these things, right? So when I say waiting for conservatives to fade into irrelevance, I'm referring to a broader societal tendency in the U.S., which sees like people with progressive views increasing. And the only reason why Republicans are able to win presidential elections at this point is due to Republican affirmative action, aka the Electoral College. If you look at the electoral numbers, like the popular vote numbers for like I think a good 20 years, except for Bush, after 9/11, etc. Like there were. The candidates for Republicans either won very narrowly or just lost the popular vote.
Russia,
Donald Trump, Firebrand, New Age, etc.
Wow, Transformer. I don't think they're going to join me, but I did give them guns that one time.
Clinton by I think it was like 2 million votes or something. So within the U.S., there's a definite tendency for the country to become more progressive and therefore not align itself with Republicans. And you know, once like if only like say 25% of the country is
the world is truly divided
deep
now.
State, January 6th, Pizzagate, conservative, then at that point there's no real division because it's just the crazies. I mean, we have them everywhere, like 75%.
I have to say one thing. You say Pizzagate's crazy. I have to say this one thing. But you know, Ghislaine Maxwell just got convicted of being a child sex procurer who flew on an airplane. So you know that. So you don't believe there's any child sex. So I'm just saying you don't believe there's any sort of child sex exploitation. I know you're talking about a pizza.
Fuck, I wanted to talk to this guy, but I'm not gonna get to on this panel.
But even though Ghislaine Maxwell is guilty of being a child sex procurer, nobody in high up does anything with children. Is that what you're saying, Adam?
That's not relevant to Pizzagate, though, right? Pizzagate's
a
different.
Wait, we have a really interesting topic. I don't think we should debate
Pizzagate. It is relevant.
Oh my god,
it's 100% relevant.
Can we move?
Because it's talking about elite people that do stuff. But you can try to make it. Oh, it's a right wing. No, you're trying to talk about Pizzagate. You're talking. Listen, I know the difference. You're talking about James Alefontis and Comet Ping Pong Pizza, but he's trying to generalize. Like there's a way that don't do anything with
Alex,
no, but let me just.
You asked them a question though. If you ask a question, right, you've got to let them answer the question.
Can I clarify quickly?
Yeah, let me clarify my question and then you answer it.
Yeah, but you asked them the question.
No. Okay. So wait, okay. So the point I was making was not about the American political elite. Of course, I mean it's full of pedophiles, as we've seen. Like fucking Epstein had the phone numbers to have the fucking U.S. elite. Sure. That's why he was killed in prison. Obvious, like we know that. What I'm saying, but I'm not talking about. Okay, I'm not. Look, I'm not talking about. Okay, now we're sure. So now okay, but what I'm talking about is the people and people's views that have been heavily informed by conservative media outlets. I'm talking about the American conservatives, and which essentially sent them off the deep end. So we're not talking about the decision makers per se. We're talking about people and their sentiments.
I think conservatives and liberals both know Ghislaine Maxwell was a child sex procurer.
Let's be for real. Nobody here is prepared to have the detailed conversation about Pizzagate except for maybe Alex. And so let's probably bring it back to the main conversation about unity.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start writing down names. I'm gonna start with Destiny, then Kevin, then Christian in that order, and then Pixel.
I think that what Taff said has to be reckoned with. This idea that Republicans are only here, like, I think that Democrats have been slowly forced to accept that it is not the case that Republicans only exist in the United States through some trickery of the system. As we expand voting to more people, even mail-in voting, it doesn't seem to favor one party over the other. As voting rights are expanded in states, it doesn't seem to favor one party over the other. And even the idea that, like, oh my God, things are unfairly gerrymandered, what a fair gerrymander even is highly contentious. Arguably, the most reasonable gerrymanders that represent real districts in the United States would heavily skew towards favoring Republicans because they tend to live in more diverse areas, more politically diverse areas than liberals who are highly concentrated in cities. So I think we have to be careful not to just assume that, like, if we eliminated one thing, like, it would be Democrats would get way more representation or something. Even the Electoral College, it might be the case that Republicans would spend more time campaigning in, like, Central California or rural parts of Vermont or something if they knew that they could get votes from there. So even the Electoral College, getting rid of that might not necessarily change the way the elections go. It might not, we don't know. I think it's important that we recognize that we have a true diversity of opinion in the United States, and that we do need to reckon with the fact that there are a lot of people who disagree with each other, and then work to like bridge that gap and have those conversations.
And everyone's in their echo chambers, right? That's what causes this misinformation to spread and these conspiracy theories to thrive. It's when people feel totally dismissed, out of hand, that they say, well, fuck you, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm only going to talk to people who are going to legitimize my views, right? And that's scary, that's dangerous. We can't have a thriving, functional society based on people feeling this way. So I think that, you know, really we need to reckon with actual differences and bring people to the table to talk to them.
So conservatives and Republicans are always going to be a thing. I've argued before that the culture war is obviously, that's not up for debate. Eventually, even the most conservative Republicans will support trans rights in a couple hundred years, but conservatives will still be a thing. They'll still be more conservative than where progressives are, and the Republican Party will still be a thing, or at least the similar ideology to it, because those values, those economic beliefs especially are popular and do resonate with people, and the Democrats don't offer that. In fact, I would say that it's actually kind of the opposite of what Adam was getting at right now, which is that if the Republicans were to just drop the, like, not everybody who's a Republican does this, but a lot of Republican officials will race bait. They'll do dog whistles against Latinos and blacks. If they drop that and they genuinely were like an equal opportunity type party, they didn't have that sort of like white centric bias to them, I would argue they would basically turn America into a one party democracy. You'd still have the Democratic Party. They look a lot like Japan, but the Republicans would win every election because a lot of black voters, a lot of Latino voters are actually conservative. And so the only reason why the Democrats have a serious shot each election is that the Republicans shoot themselves in the foot by being racist. And you might say, well, why do they do it? Well, they don't necessarily care about winning. A lot of these officials would rather not have to sit or work with a black guy than win more elections, and that's just the nature of the party right now. Now, that's not to say all Republicans. I think Bill Kristol, if you look at him, he's got a great way to unite and have a really reasonable Republican Party. And in fact, I would say, you know, people like Bill Kristol, people like Mitt Romney, these are the sort of folks on the right that the left should be engaging with, should be welcoming, not demonizing or whatever, because they fundamentally do believe in a generally a progressive America in the sense of, you know, racial equality and everything. They just happen to be, you know, conservative on matters of economics and whatnot, or, you know, small L liberal, that sort of stuff. I think the problem is, you know, you've got a radical fringe on the far right and the far left, and they've been heightened and amplified by foreign interference, specifically always having them on. You turn on Russia Today America, who's always on? It's the Green Party, it's the Libertarian Party, it's some far right racist, it's some far left pro-Russia fan, right? That's what's really driving that division, because America's always had division. It was just never as salient as it is now, because there's that potential for foreign malfeasance.
We gotta move on. We're gonna throw to Walker is next.
Walker.
Oh, sorry, Watson.
Texas Ranger.
That's funny. No, I want to echo what Taft and Destiny said. You know, conversation is important, and Adam Something really has a very cynical and dismal view of civilization. You know, John Stuart Mill had the radical idea that that discourse was the bridge between error and truth. And really, the reason, again, why a lot of people embrace falsehood is because human beings are creatures of desire. We desire something a little bit bigger than ourselves. We desire community, and a lot of folks happen to just fall into the wrong kind of people who say the right kind of things, or what sound like the right kind of things to them, and soothe their ears, and that brings them down this long tailspin. This is how cults happen. This is how the Ku Klux Klan has got a lot of its members even in. And Daryl Davis has used the principle of discourse to go ahead and convince many Klansmen to shed the robe and embrace a colorblind idea and forego their racism. So discussion is absolutely imperative to beating bad ideas. I mean, sectioning off an entire part of the country, like Hillary Clinton did, calling them deplorables or undesirables, doesn't do anything but cause more resentment and cause bad ideas to flourish even more. So we have to confront this with discourse, not with derision.
Pixel?
I think the problem in America is that because discourse has always been so far to the right as opposed to in other let's say, liberal democracies, it's that a lot of progressives have commonly had to meet conservatives on their
certain words.
On
I
their
can't handle it.
ground.
America,
like the agreement in a Christian God, or like progressives in America have always had to continue to make concessions to conservative beliefs in order to be able to continue having that conversation with them. And that's the most difficult thing to get past in American politics, because there are just fundamental differences in like an understanding of the world. And so I think that is where one of the major struggles will exist in uniting. If we're talking about conversation, that's where one of the like fundamental problems will be.
And Adam.
Sure. So I just wanted to add to what I said before. So as Pixel said, the U.S. is distinctly more sort of right-leaning than other Western democracies. That's just true. The Democratic Party from Europe, it's like a center-right party at best, with some like progressive virtue signaling, which is good though, like, and some progressive measures, so that's good. The problem with the Republican Party though is that the far right has kind of started becoming the mainstream under Trump.
Fuck.
You know, like Trump dropping the euphemism instead of protecting the job market. Now we have we're just gonna bar Mexicans and like Muslims and whatever from the country. You know, of course the classic very fine people on both sides. So on the Republican Party, there has been a distinct shift towards the far right in recent years, and at that point, like I think that's the thing that really prevents discourse, because so once again, like this is the centrism problem, right? So if one party says, hey, we want to let in say 1 million immigrants into the U.S. every year, and the other party says, okay, well, we want to let in 200,000 immigrants to the U.S. every year, and so you know we can sit down to the table, we can discuss, we can come to a conclusion. Okay, you know what? We're gonna let in 600,000 immigrants, and then everyone is happy, everyone is celebrating. But then, what if one party says, "Hey, we should let in immigrants into the country," and the other says that no, we cannot do that because that will ruin the white character of our nation, and so ban all immigration from brown countries, etc. Like, there's no argument to be had there, right? Because the views are just diametrically opposed, and so what you can do there is essentially work to make the other side, which you find heinous, essentially irrelevant politically. Which is it's a natural process. So don't think of this as like the Biden death squad showing up to Alabama and like purging the trailer parks or something. No, this is just an ongoing process, and I think every person who doesn't belong to the Republican school of thought, I think, should help it along. And I have a cat on my chair. Thank you.
Why not ask people why they believe the things they believe, and then use scrutiny to analyze those beliefs? Yes, there are some people who are indeed way far gone. I agree. And how society, or how rather us as individuals, not society, us as individuals handle those kind of folks is going to be a very different conversation. But a lot of folks are quite agreeable, at least on some basic things. And so you shouldn't just count off a bunch of people, write off a bunch of people rather, from being reasoned with because they held some beliefs that you personally find to be heinous or incorrect. Again, this is the Daryl Davis principle. Go in to the dens of the Klansmen, show them kindness, talk to them, explain to them nicely why they're wrong, and if some of them will not shed their beliefs, but many of them did and are continuing to do so, and they're leaving that ideology, and colorblindness and racial equality are getting more advocates, which makes the ideas that you want to see succeed even more popular. That's the principle we should be embracing, and so this idea that people who are, again, deplorable
What? What? Headphones! That's the stupidest fucking thing ever.
controls, they're far gone. That's just not an idea that's going to be contributive to a free and prospering civilization. It's contributive to an insular civilization that is going to eventually evolve into some kind of internal conflict and perhaps collapse from it or whatever.
Well, Christian, the problem with that, though, is that when Hillary Clinton said that there was 50%, she said about half of Trump supporters were deplorables. She was correct about that, and that those people in recent years have gotten far more radicalized to the point where One America News Network is the liberal wing of their movement. That's how like, it's a problem, okay? And I think, you know, any sort of serious discussion about this can't just be, okay, well, let's just sit down and talk to people on the other side. We actually have to look at what's the source of the problem, because there was always division in America, but social media and the internet allowed foreign countries, foreign enemies to take advantage of that. And we can't do that to Russia because Russia censors their own media. Russia meddles in their own media. They have their own state media. So they can do it to us, but we can't do it to them. Now, I'm not arguing we should be like them, but it is a vulnerability of an open society and a democracy. And I think that we need to be aware of it. And we should have legislation to keep out media propaganda from hostile countries. Would you be opposed to that?
Yeah. Because again, the internet has sort of democratized and connected the entire world together. And so, you know, even if you explicitly ban foreign regimes from advertising in America, there are other ways that foreign regimes can get their stuff into America. So instead of trying to ban and censor things, why not? I wouldn't even be opposed to, and this is a little bit even too much for me, for the government releasing some sort of national security notice that's like a handbook. Here's how you can recognize the signs of foreign influence in certain kinds of ads. I wouldn't be opposed to that, because yes, it can be a national security problem in some cases. But banning and censoring things will not stop a regime that is aggressively determined on influencing American minds from doing so.
It'll make it harder for them to do it. So it's the government. You're fine with the government. Wait. You're fine with the government acknowledging that it's a security threat, but you're not okay with the government addressing that threat. You just say leave people to their own devices, because that's not working. Putin's winning the information war right now, and it's unfortunate.
The founders understood that you need a virtuous people for a free society, and you cannot
legislate. But they didn't know about the internet.
It's not a virtuous people; it's an educated people.
Well, a virtuous education is a virtue. Education is a virtue.
Okay, but they never could have predicted that Putin would use propaganda and information warfare the way that he's doing. Right?
The point is much less about the founders and more so about the principle of people being self-educated and having the knowledge to combat these things themselves, because that's going to be much more powerful, in my opinion.
Self-education is the problem, though, right? Like, because the American education system is so flawed in so many ways.
Yes.
The self-education system is not working because you literally have QAnon, which got exported to like my country as well and everywhere else.
Hey, I gotta say this. You guys keep on talking. I want to say this. Why is everybody saying the right? Joe Biden just got 81 million votes and is our president. Why are you guys keep on talking that everybody's so right in America? I would say that America's more progressive than right. I mean,
80 million people still voted for Trump, though, right?
But I'm saying so more. If you know 81 million, there's so more people are progressive. So Trump lost. Do you know that?
Yes, but that's still a lot of people with like literally polarized politics.
Wait. It's not an argument against division.
Biden. So we're more progressive.
There's too many people talking.
I know.
I can't hear anything. So we gotta everybody quiet down for a second. Alex Stein hasn't said anything for most of the panel, so I'm gonna let him.
I can't get a word in. I mean, Kevin, all he does is, talk about cringe, dude. Every point you make is cringe. I mean, I can't even listen to you.
You thought Russia was in NATO. My goober, you thought Russia was in NATO,
dude. That doesn't mean
I
can't have an opinion, and that doesn't mean every opinion I make is wrong.
Your opinion is goofy. It just means that your opinion is Chesterfield, dude. Your opinion is Chesterfield, Alex.
Dude, you're sitting there with that beard. You look like the worst goofball I've ever seen in my life.
You know what? The beard.
You can't even button your necktie. I'm just saying, you're in Canada. You don't even know what you're talking about. You're talking about the representation of America. You don't. Every time you say
excuse me, the same tactics that Putin's using against your country, he's using against mine. We have a common enemy, and apparently you're in this subservient to him to their talking points. Honestly, it's completely embarrassing that you come on
Okay, I gotta shut it down.
You thought Russia was in NATO.
Okay, both of you are gonna be muted. Okay, Alex, so you will be able to finish your point. You got about like 30 seconds, okay? All right.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you have any viewers, they're absolutely idiots. I just want to say that.
Excuse me, my community is smarter than all of yours.
Stop. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying they're absurd. So you can say whatever you want about me. But listen, this is the problem with America, is that we have a media that's going to constantly keep us divided. Every single aspect, from the social engineering, from the people in power, is going to keep us divided. So listen, and really in a foxhole, people aren't even that racist. When you go into the store, people aren't like saying the N-word. It's not as bad as you say. There's not people having lynchings.
I was like, what's going on with foxhole?
Of course, but to the level and degree that they say racism exists, it's not like that. But you're going to have people, this is the thing, this is the problem. A&W Hamburgers, when they got in the hamburger business, they were trying to compete with McDonald's. They did a nationwide survey study. They asked Americans what they thought was a better value, a quarter-pounder burger for $4 or a third-pound burger for the same
Oh, yeah, and they couldn't tell the difference. Yeah.
Price. Overwhelmingly, Americans picked the quarter-pounder burger thinking 1/4 is more than 1/3. So we're dealing with idiots. Everybody can't do a simple math problem like that. So that's why the media, that's why the social engineers that control the narrative will always have us fighting with each other. If we actually want to solve our problems, we would stop fighting with each other, bickering over race, sex, and gender issues that people don't even normally care about, and actually fix the multinational corporations that are running the world. Yeah, I'm saying, but that's how we solve the problems. That's how we do.
People care about race and sex and gender. That's kind of a big part of people's lives, dude.
Yeah, but I'm saying at the store, but that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't judge a person by the color of their skin. You should judge it by the content of their character. But you don't want to do that. You have to give.
You're on the side. Yeah, but you're on the side.
I'm the one that's trying to be.
That do have an issue with people on the basis of their skin color and their gender or their sex. I'm not saying you. I'm saying the conspiracy camp, the far right conspiracy camp. That's basically the problem here,
I'm not
right?
far right. Okay, you're trying to make me.
Well, you've defended a far right petro state tonight.
I do a lot of different stuff. I'm in the middle. See, I'm actually a centrist.
I'm meeting both of you because what you're doing right now, both of you, is you're dividing this country further, okay? You're tearing it at the seams. You and Kevin will divide this country further. The Vaxong man and the Canadian. So, we're probably going to wrap it up since we're at 11:12. So I'm going to start with Christian because Christian wants to say something.
Yeah, I think that this is a problem across political spectrum too. I think that a lot of progressives tend to overstate the influence of QAnon.
There's like 4 guys on this line.
Lo and behold, the Trump camp most certainly has brought out some elements of the country that are horrid and that should not at all be embraced at all. Not means we shouldn't talk to them, but beliefs. But most people, I think,
that's happening.
Voted as a protest statement.
Fuck!
The typical everyday establishment, doings of Washington. Mitch McConnell saying we're going to balance the budget and going ahead and passing a $1 trillion omnibus bill. John Boehner saying we're going to cut cap and balance and going ahead and funding and funding some of Barack Obama's one of the biggest spending expenses. I mean, there are all kind of reasons why Trump was voted in, and to say that racism was one of them is really to overstate the importance of that. And really, I think conservatives overstate.
Okay, we are going to retake the aisles.
On the left really aren't socialist. A lot of folks on the left are basically progressive. Some are neoliberals or whatever. Some don't think neoliberals on the left. I think they are. But a lot of them are not, strict socialists. So I think that the fundamental attribution error is a psychological phenomenon, has an impact on all of us. But ultimately, to wrap this all up, I think that again, we have a basis within our humanity for civilizational unity. And I think that if we channel that basis, if we use self-love as a general rule, because obviously not everyone is going to adhere to that principle, but if we use self-love as a way to interact with the community and as a way to respect others, we can get past our political differences insofar as we can sustain a civilization and still argue honestly and earnestly like we've done tonight. So I appreciate it, guys, and this has been a wonderful conversation.
Wonderful. And where can people find you?
Oh yeah, so you can find me on. Oh, I'm scared for this one because this is. I've been saying some crazy stuff tonight, I guess. You can find me on Twitter or @officialcwatson, or you can find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Christian Watson. You just type it in on YouTube. It's Christian Watson, Watson, and you can go to christianjwatson.com and email me if you want to. And yeah, I look forward to interacting with the folks who I've been speaking to tonight.
Wonderful. Happy to have you on. Throwing it over now to Adam Something.
Thank you. So it's been a very good discussion. Should we refer to the topics we've discussed, or should we just do generally outro?
Just the last topic and then outro.
All right, sure. So yeah, basically, the fact that Americans call everything and anything left of center socialism and communism is also a product largely of the sort of this Fox News right-wing media empire, etc. As we all know, socialism equal government does thing. Oh well. Anyway, but the American left is like a milquetoast Sagdam at best. Europe has far more left-leaning political candidates, so I don't think this is such a big issue like the leftism in America, which almost doesn't exist. Otherwise, like Chris, you said you're worried about civilizational decline and going insular and isolationism, etc. Well, that typically happens when people like in the Trump camp get elected. When they start excluding people, when isolationism gets ratcheted up. That's usually the sign of course, and patriotic education. You know, there's nothing wrong with the country. Don't even try to fix it. All those progressives who want change in the country are enemies. Like that's usually, there's a very good correlation with like nations dying with those when those sentiments get too popular or too loud. Otherwise, that's my 2 cents on the issue. Thank you for having me on. It's been fun. I'm on YouTube. Don't worry, you'll find me. So
happy to have you on. And you're basically only on YouTube. You don't have like a Twitter. You don't have like anything.
I'm very concerned about my own mental health. Yes.
Wonderful. Now we're going to throw it to Alex Stein.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have
needed
any
in the European theater.
About my mental health, so that's the difference between you and me. My mental health is level insanity. But listen, guys, like I said earlier, you can find me on YouTube, Conspiracy Castle, or Twitter, Alex999. Listen, Kevin, I don't dislike you. You know, I know we argued about stuff, but when you say cringe every single second, that's a lot of self-projection. But let me do a little cringe myself for this debate. I'm a conspiratorial person, but that doesn't mean I'm on the right side. I think that insulin costs $200 in Texas, but it's $2 in Mexico. That's wrong. We should have some sort of socialized medicine. So the problem is you guys are marginalizing people by saying, because I don't like Trump. What I'm saying is you guys are putting people. You guys are marginalized people by saying people on the right are all Trump supporters. You're putting people. So really, that is racist. What you're doing when you do that, and the way you judge like that. I'm just saying it is. It is. So at the end of the day, I mean, when you guys judge a country based on those things, you are doing the exact same thing that you're trying to speak against. So a lot of hypocrites, a lot of people I enjoyed in this debate, a lot of people hopefully I'll get to talk to again. But at the end of the day, we really don't hate each other. We're divided by social engineers that make us hate each other. And really, most people will help somebody at the end on the side of the road if they're broken down. At least in my neighborhood, they will go get you a tank of gas. I mean, that's just how the America that I live in is, honestly.
Wonderful. And I'm gonna now throw it over to Parker.
So I think there are a lot of ideas that we do need to address, like, for example, QAnon and anti-vax. A lot of the times people will like to just say that, like, oh, they're crazy and not necessarily address their arguments. And I know there's a lot of, like, actual, basis to that. A lot of them are. But we do also need to recognize that there are lots of people out there, specifically vaccine-hesitant people, who are becoming susceptible to these types of arguments because their narratives are being banned and not talked about. And instead of just banning and not talking about them, we should address these arguments so that people aren't necessarily emboldened, like those ideas aren't emboldened. I am on TikTok. I go live every single day relatively. My @ is @ParkerSedgwick. It was great having a conversation today. I'm happy to have come on, and thanks for the opportunity.
Happy to have you here. Hope to have you again in the future. Now we're gonna throw it over to Pixel Smixel.
I think at the end of the day, conversation is good, but there is a lot of nuance that needs to be navigated, which sometimes gets lost on the internet. I think that anything we can do to make a democracy more robust is really important, including addressing things in America, such as the electoral college and media influence. As someone who lives in Australia and has seen a lot of American influence over the pandemic, it's important to me to at least see where America goes, because it really does. It has deep influence all throughout the West. When it, you know, in my case in particular, my state leader was called a communist for trying to save people from the pandemic. So
not all my planes.
It's
I don't know.
An interesting time to be having these conversations, but I'll keep having them. I am on very late at night American time. I cover the news. I have a decent BBC newsreader voice that I do use to cover the news as a bit of a shtick, and then we talk about it. So, yeah, I'm not afraid of differing opinions. I sometimes muddle my words because my brain goes too fast and then it comes out bad. But yeah, twitch.tv/pixelsnixel. Thanks for having me on, Dylan. I appreciate it.
Happy to have you. Throwing it over now to Kevin Castley.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. It's great to be here tonight. We had some pretty heated discussions and debates. That was pretty good. So I will close by saying, you know, I think it's important to note that, yeah, the problem with the division in the United States and Western countries is not just coming from the far right. I think I made very clear to mention it's also a problem with the far left and populism in general. And any conversation that's going to address this to actually seek meaningful solutions has to ultimately focus on how do we counter and prevent and minimize and mitigate foreign interference, because that really is the big factor that changed
on fucking crack
standard division for centuries versus now, is that now countries can meddle a lot easier via the internet, and we have been asleep to it. It's time to wake up. We got 2 Cold Wars going on right now. Our enemies know it. It's time that we woke up to it, and we had our Sputnik moments, and we actually got serious about countering.
France has no units in France.
So I'm Kevin Castley. I host Superpower Broadcasting. We stream to Twitch 7 days a week, and also upload content to YouTube daily as well, and gonna have some premieres over there again coming up in the near future. We also do gaming streams now and then, but mostly talk about foreign policy and whatnot. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at Kevin Castley, and I'm going to be doing a post show on Superpower Broadcasting to talk about this panel tonight in about over on Twitch, Superpower Broadcasting. Thanks, Dylan.
Sorry, I just hear some howling in the background. Throwing it over to Taft.
Yeah, great. I would say I grew up in a rural community and around a lot of conservatives. And I think that one thing that progressives and leftists need to know is that when you're telling people that they're like these uninformed, like idiot racist people who believe in all these conspiracy theories, you're not helping the conversation. You're not advancing it. Because what people are going to do is they're going to look at you and say, well, I don't believe in QAnon, right? Like, or I guess I know someone who believes in QAnon, but like, I don't believe in it. Or they're going to say, I don't feel racist because I don't judge people by the color of their skin, right? And in their mind, even if you believe that like having a, you know, black Supreme Court justice is like fighting racism, in their mind, they're going to think, well, no, that is racist because what we need is actually colorblindness. And that's what it means to be non-racist. So I think that if you really want political unity, you need to meet these people on their terms. And that means not just like totally demonizing them, even if you think that they're totally wrong. So, I mean, I think that there just needs to be a lot more open dialogue and communication from people. I would say thanks for the conversation. It was definitely fun. These are definitely hard debates to get a word in edgewise or to express nuanced, complicated ideas. But I had a good time. Follow me at Taftaj.
Wonderful. Happy to have you on. And Destiny?
Definitely wouldn't have predicted at the beginning of the night that Conspiracy Castle would be the far and away most impressive debater on the panel. But, I mean, man, he made some pretty killer points. Was able to point out some big flaws in other people's arguments. So, yeah, I guess you can learn new things on these panels all the time without ever realizing it. I'm glad I'm here. It's fun, a fun exchange of ideas. And that's what America needs to truly heal, is more people talking about how everybody is a pedophile while also understanding that insulin is too high.
Outstanding. Destiny, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, but I have to go to the gym and I'm already like an hour late. What do you want? Wait, are we done? Wait, before you get weird personal stuff, are we done with the show? Or?
We need weird personal shit, right? Look, I got my camera up high so you're looking down at me, in black and white so I'm non-threatening. I just want to know why the fuck you keep ducking me.
I'm not ducking anything.
Bro, you're ducking me harder than my sister at a fucking hoedown, alright? Look, All I know is that somehow you and Dylan end up fucking meeting, right? And then he ends up sick with COVID, right? And then the match gets fucking pushed out further and further and further. When are you gonna stop ducking me, bro? That's all I want to know. So with that, you can go back. You need to go to the fucking gym. Make sure you pump out some extra fucking weight, because I'm coming for that ass. CTV out.
Wow.
Why men? Honestly.
It seems that
wow, what was that all
men.
about? I got your back, Destiny. I'm gonna send him a computer virus, dude. What is that?
Thank you, dude. Conspiracy Castle. Thank you so much.
Wow, it seems that the CTV Destiny match is heating up as they continue to have beef. Destiny, you have any thoughts on that? He's calling you out.
Yeah, I need to go ahead and hurry up to the gym so that I can work on Get Strong for him to fight me.
Okay.
Love you.
See y'all later, buddy.
Okay. Other guys, it's been fun. Rip on. Ripper and a cappuccino, 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 my dinner. Oh!
Don't care, Reno. Haha, got him. Woo!